What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. We are here today with another Dominican panel. Today, we're going to be discussing some things that have been mentioned in the past or that was even brought up during my Dominican live stream. But we have here Paola, who will be acting as a moderator with me, an impartial moderator, and helping ask questions. And we have Haniel, Juli, and Paola, aka Afro-LatinX, who we will be having this discussion with and asking different questions. They have been on my panels before, but you guys don't always get a chance to speak. So we wanted to have you guys back so that we could actually have a proper discussion without interruption and stuff like that. So we're first going to begin actually with Haniel. I know that you wanted to bring up some points in regards to a video that Afro-LatinX did, and then from there we'll get into the different questions. So Haniel, you can go ahead and start. And if you're not talking, guys, mute yourself because there is a little bit of feedback coming from somebody.
Okay, hello guys. So Paola, a few months ago, I think it was 1 month ago, she posted a video on her YouTube channel, right? In which she tries to understand what are the origins of Haitianophobia, and she tried to and she did what Afrocentrics tends to do, that they think that the only way, this is my perception, you can refute this after this, but what I perceive is that the only way that they fight Haitianophobia, which for me is necessary, is a good thing. We shouldn't be Haitianophobics, but the only way that they have to fight Haitianophobia is with Hispanophobia. So she then proceeded to basically make a quite superficial and sophisticated argument in which she compared the 200-year reign of the Spanish crown over Santo Domingo to the Haitian occupation of Santo Domingo, right? And what I argue is that this is a superficial point without any type of nuance, and that Dominicans, the Spaniards were the ones who formed the Dominican Republic, not the Haitians. The Dominican identity is not a pre-existent identity prior to the Spanish colonization. So, and the construction of the Dominican identity was actually very before the Restoration War, which was the war of Spain against the Dominican Republic, which was a civil war against pro-royalist Dominicans and pro-independence Dominicans. Before that war, the Dominican identity was intrinsically linked with Spanishness, right? I mean, the first national anthem of Dominican Republic, the first one, not the Quisqueyanos Valientes, not that one, the one who was written by Feliz María del Monte, he starts with these words: "Al arma españoles, volada la lid, tomar por divisa, vencer o morir." This is one of the sentences, and there's another sentence that is important to highlight, which is, this is the first Dominican national anthem, in which he says: "No hay piedad. El haitiano insolente penetrando hasta nuestros hogares profanó nuestros templos y altares, nuestros fueros osó atropellar y el pudor de la cándida virgen y las canas del mísero anciano, y cuánto hay de sagrado en lo humano, ultrajó con orgullo procaz." Right? And then he said, "Alarma españoles, volada la lid." Right? So, as I said, many Dominicans felt like they were Spaniards, and they felt that they were being invaded by the Haitians, and they didn't feel like, yeah, of course they felt Dominican, right? To a certain extent, they felt like Santo Domingo, yeah, they were part of Santo Domingo, but they felt Spaniards, like Spanish, like just as the Spaniards from the peninsula, right? So what I said to Paola is that she shouldn't compare the 200-year reign of Spain over Santo Domingo, and instead she should compare the 4 or 5 years of reign that the Spanish crown had over the Dominican Republic during the Restoration War, with the 40 years of Haitian occupation of the island. So instead of comparing to the 200 years of Spanish reign, you should compare the small period of time that that Spain reigned over the Dominican Republic after its independence from Haiti with the Haitian occupation.
Okay. Paola, do you want to respond anything to that?
Well, I have a question, but before I ask my question, you know, I don't agree that before the Haitian occupation that all Dominicans felt Spanish. That's a fallacy. Like that's like saying like even the slaves in the Dominican Republic felt like they were Spanish. Like, and like if you're talking about like pre-Haitian rule or occupation, they had slaves, and yes, the slavery was different than Haiti. However, you can't say that those slaves felt like Spanish people. Maybe the ruling class felt like Spanish people. Like, yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that. But if like you can't say that everybody in the Dominican Republic felt Spanish, because that, like, to me, that's a fallacy, right? They had, yes, you know, Spanish had an influence on making what DR is today. Like it's part of who we are as Dominicans, but it was not the identity that everybody saw themselves as in the Dominican Republic, especially the cimarrones. Like they weren't like, oh yes, we're Spanish and I feel like I'm Spanish. No, especially when they had still Spanish people migrating at the time who did not see them, the cimarrones or the black people or the people that were mulatto or enslaved, as Spanish themselves. So I feel like that's a fallacy, and like you can't say that just because they felt like they were Spanish, only the ruling class, that you can't really compare. You can't compare that time period that they ruled before the occupation of Spain, the occupation of Haiti, to the occupation of Haiti. So it's like kind of like you're saying I should only compare the 5 years after the rule. Like, to me, that don't make any sense. Like that's how I feel. It just doesn't make any sense. And then I guess my question is, how is it that my argument is Hispanophobia? Because like, it's not like I'm telling people in my video, I never said people shouldn't speak Spanish. I never said people shouldn't practice Catholicism. I pointed out realities. I pointed out that yes, the Spanish people came over. They imposed their religion and their language on people. It's not like people were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna speak this language. It's eventually, like, people just started speaking it because it is what it is. Like, the Spanish came over and they were like, this is gonna be our land. We're gonna take it over and we're gonna do what we want to do with it. And they forced their language and their religion, and people eventually started to assimilate to it because it is what it became what it became. So like, yes, people speak Spanish. Yes, people practice Catholicism. And then within all that, you know, you get our food and our music, and, you know, you get all those other things that become part of Dominican culture. But I never said that people shouldn't be Catholics. I pointed out that is something through time that is changing, and that's not because me, like, it's not that people are like not being Catholic because of me. It's because through time things change. People migrate into the country and they bring their own ideals and they bring their own religion. So people either decide to either stay with Catholicism or change to a different religion because of the other because of the other influences that are in the country. And same thing with Spanish as well. Like, to me, it's always going to be the predominant language in the Dominican Republic. I don't have no interest in changing it. Like, I think that, and I think I said it in the video, I'm proud that I speak Spanish, but it came to a cost of our native and African ancestors. And I don't think that there's anything bad with saying that. I don't think that that's Hispanophobic, or saying that the religion is changing is Hispanophobic. Like, it's just the reality of what things are. And
sorry.
Like, you think I'm Afrocentric, whatever you want to think of Afrocentric. Yeah, I think that I should go by Afrocentric beliefs, in a sense where, yeah, I think that people should understand their Afro side a lot more, because our Afro side and our indigenous side is what made us communal. Those are the cultures that made us care about, or that have the love, and to think about us as a community. It didn't really come from our European side. And if that came from our European side, it only came because, Spain was ruled by the Moors for 700 years. And the Moors were Black. And I know you're going to argue against that, but there were many different facets of Moors. And there were not just Moors that were Middle Eastern. There was all kinds of Moors. And the Moors that ruled over Spain were not the Middle Eastern ones. They were the Black ones from South Africa.
South Africa.
Yes.
Okay, Paula. I think
we have Africa.
We have a lot of.
The question is how
we have a lot of stuff. Yeah. We have a lot of stuff to discuss. You made a lot of points. You made a lot of points. But I think you said that. Why are you Hispanophobic? Because I think there's you think that the way to, as I said, you think that the way to fight Haitianophobia is with Hispanophobia, is by condemning the 200 years of reign of Spain, which was the 200 years that consolidated the Dominican identity and the Dominican nationality. Of course, you're right in the point that white Dominicans and also some freedman mulatto Dominicans felt as if they were Spaniards. Of course, I'm gonna concede that point. But the Dominican nationality, to a certain extent, was constructed by those men, right? And additionally, and I don't think it should be restrictive. I think Black Dominicans should be included into that Dominican ethos. I don't oppose that. You said that our sense of community derived from the natives and the Blacks, and then you said something about the Moors, and that the Moors were Black. I don't think there were some Moors that were Black, but I don't think the majority of them were Black. There probably were many of them were probably white. Many Spanish converted to Islam, and so on. But or of my color, I don't know. But I don't think the majority of them were Black. I don't think there was I don't think the dynasties that govern Al-Andalus were Black. I don't think so. I think you're historically inaccurate in that point.
I went to Spain and I took a whole course in Spain where the professor told me that they were Black.
Yeah, sure. But that's a authority fallacy. But okay. But besides that, the argument that but I don't really think that you address my point, because you're not catching the nuance of my point. The problem here is that the Dominican identity was not persistent to Spain. I mean, before Spain, there was no Dominicanidad, let's put it that way. A huge portion of the island, probably like the 50% of the criollos, and that were in Dominican Republic, felt like they were Spaniards and felt that they were being invaded. And the Dominican identity is very connected to those kind of individuals, as opposed to Haiti, which was more like a slave identity focusing on the black side. And they were different. Dominican Republic, the slavery in Dominican, it was mainly a ranching society, like cattle slavery in this to a certain extent, which makes a more like egalitarian form. I'm being sorry. I'm being yeah. It was more. There was more equality between the master and the slave in Dominican Republic. Of course, there was huge differences between them, but there was more equality than in Dominican Republic, than in the Haitian side. But the point is that Dominican Republic was not a persistent identity before Spain. Many Dominicans felt that they were Spaniards, and Dominican Republic gained its independence from Haiti, and then from Spain during the Restoration War. But to compare the 200 years of Spanish reign, which Dominican Republic was an integral part of the Spanish crown. Of course, Dominican Republic was a poor part of the Spanish crown. Dominican Republic was basically a forgotten part of the empire. But besides that, it still, in a legal sense, was an integral part of the Spanish Empire. But and to compare it with the Haitian occupation is just an analysis that lacks nuance. It's just an analysis that lacks nuance. It's an analysis that lacks the analysis, the perspective that of the evolution of the Dominican national character, which is you're completely dismissing by just making in Spanish there's this term lisologismo, right, which is just an interpretation that is in end very abstract, that ignores the process of identification, of identity, of ethnogenesis, and so on and so on. Also, there's another point that you made about the sense of community. Maybe you were referring to mestizaje. Of course, I think that the Moors had something. No, well, but the Moors had something to do with mestizaje, of course, in Spain. But the sense of community is more like a Catholic sense of community, not a Muslim sense of community. Maybe there's a part of indigenous aspect of like the communal life that they had, but Spain also had a communal interpretation of reality, which was strictly focused on how Catholicism structures social life in the Spanish colonies. So I don't think it has nothing to do with Spaniards, the sense of community. I mean, I'm thinking about it. If you think about it, in Dominican Republic, I'm Don Haniel, hijo de Don Fulano, right? So they recognize my family. They're like redes de familias, right? That people recognize your last name, even in the high sector of society or the lowest sector of society. There's this sense of communal life, which is, I would say, pretty colonial alike, and that's not, I don't think that precisely comes from necessarily the black slaves or the Tainos, but rather from the Spanish colonial system.
Okay, so I want to just quickly ask the first question, which is basically what you guys are already talking about. And Uli, you can give your opinion as well. So the first question was to talk about the Dominican identity prior to 1821, during the Haitian occupation, and post 1844. So again, this is kind of what you guys are already talking about, but also getting into how the Dominican identity formed during the 22 years of Haitian occupation and also after that. So Uli, did you want to add anything as far as what they've said so far?
Yes. Again, thank you for inviting me. One point that I like to make, the idea that the people in the past, before there was even such a thing as the Dominican Republic as an independent country today, that they felt Spaniards, it shouldn't be that weird to us. I mean, it is weird to us because we're looking at it from the vantage point where we are right now. We know that the Dominican Republic succeeded as an independent nation So yeah, after 177 years, oh yeah, I don't know how somebody in the past couldn't wish what we had today, but it wasn't as simple as that at that time. In prior to the Declaration of Independence from Spain in 1821, I mean, that territory, what we call the Dominican Republic today, has been part of Spain for over 300 years. Somebody at that time, even from the wealthiest person to the poorest one, they didn't know anything else. That's what they knew. It's like us here in the United States. Oh yes, I mean we live in the United States. I live in the United States. Haniel, you're in the Dominican Republic. The idea that you could be something different from what you are today, legally, a Dominican or Venezuelan, whatever you want to call it, that didn't most people didn't think like that about separation from Spain. So it's not really weird that they felt, yeah, and Spaniards. It's like, because they're not talking about a sense of identity, like, oh yeah, and they were not fooled. Most people didn't. In fact, they were fighting against the system that the Spanish have, what we call the casta system, that basically put the Spaniards at the top. And even if you were white, but you were born in America, you were inferior to that. They were fighting against that within the system. But they saw, yes, we're Spanish, and we want full rights. The idea of something else, being independent and building what the society that we have built today as independent nation, they were not even thinking about that. So it's not really that weird that they saw it as a Spaniards. At the same time as the Dominican identity existed prior to the independence. And yes, I think I mentioned this in one of the streams. I don't know if somebody got it, but the first time that somebody referred to the people of the island as Dominican, what happened in 1625. It will be in 2025. That would be like 400 years since somebody in a record referred to the people in the island as Dominicans. That is an identity that has existed for a really long time. At that time, the island was attacked by the Dutch. That, you know, where the enemies of the Spaniards. They tried to take over the island. They failed, and the King of Spain wrote a letter to the people of the island thanking the Dominicans for the bravery in fighting the Dutch invader.
But
So,
Dominicans and that were part of Spain, that they also
correct.
consider themselves to be
No,
Spaniards.
what I'm talking about, the identity of the people of the island as Dominicans existed way before the Dominican Republic existed as a nation. The Dominican identity has always been there, even as part of the Kingdom of Spain, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, even in the Spanish Empire, there were many nations in the Americas. I mean, most of the a native tribe, they just didn't do, okay, yes, we accept that the King of Spain is our ruler or whatever, but we are still whatever we are today. I mean, they knew what they had to do to keep the Spanish happy. Okay, yeah, we just pretend that we're Christians. We pay whatever tax you want to pay us as long as you leave us alone. But they didn't stop being who they were. Same thing in Haiti. That's another point I want to make. Even after the slave rebellion started in 1791, when they succeeded and they freed the slaves, Haiti was still Saint Domingue, the colony of the French colony. They saw themselves, even to Saint Louis too, saw themselves, well, I'm just a French citizen. It's just, I just want the same, I just want to be free. You know, the French, for some point during the time of the French Republic, yeah, they agree with that. Then the French Republic fell, Napoleon came in and said, no, we don't want that either. You are a slave. And that's when the French sent troops to the island to try to take over Haiti again. And that's when the Haitians decided, okay, you know what? This French thing is not working. We need to do our own thing. And in 1804, Haiti was declared as an independent nation. But before that, even they thought they were French. They just wanted to work within the system. So the idea that people from that time saw themselves as Spanish or French or whatever, it sounds weird from a point of view because we're seeing it now, but that's not how it was in the past.
I also think that I mean, that's why a person like Juan Sanchez Ramirez is part of the Panteón Nacional and is considered one of the founder fathers of Dominican Republic, right? Juan Sanchez I really doubt that Juan Sanchez Ramirez considers himself to be a independent, to have an independent Dominican identity. No, he fought against the French for the Spanish king, you know?
Yeah, but he's just one person.
Just as many Dominicans that fought against the Haitian occupation felt that they were Spaniards and felt that they were being invaded by French Haitian revolutionaries that wanted to destroy the Hispanic identity of Dominican Republic by destroying the church, by imposing French as the national language, by destroying by censoring the rooster fights, right? Also, that was a huge part of Dominican identity. So, I mean, Haiti tried to destroy Dominican identity, and this and just like the Spanish fought against the revolutionary ideas of Napoleon, the Dominicans fought against the revolutionary ideas of Louverture, Dessalines, and Boyer.
Yes, I have a question. Why does have the Dominican identity from back then, prior 1844, to be exclusive? Why does it? Why can it? Of course, I agree with Ulysses. We're seeing it with the eyes of today, and it's history, facts. We shouldn't see it through the processes, historic process that we know today, but as events or the society from 1800s. Maybe was the Dominican identity just like many French people from the Caribbean have, like they can be from Guadeloupe, Martinique, all those places, and feel Martiniquais, Guadeloupean, all those islands, but at the same time know that they are French. Maybe it was
Puerto Rico again. That's a good example. Puerto Rico, they're Puerto Ricans, but they know they're Americans. So
exactly.
There's no contradiction.
Yeah, exactly. There is no contradiction.
But there was.
Wouldn't you? So why does it have to be mutual exclusive for you, Haniel, and for Paola? Maybe you're. Don't you think that you're not focusing on the legal and political aspects of the identity, because the nationalism or the national identity didn't really exist back then. Those are creations from the late 1800s, that they came with the elimination, all that stuff, and people didn't have those feelings. So why is it for you mutual exclusive to be a slave and at the same time feeling Spanish? Because, okay, not the same kind of slavery, but sort of slavery also exists in Europe, and even in Russia at the end of the 1900s, still some kind of slavery existed in Russia, and that didn't impede people to feel Russian. So why is it for Haniel and Paola again, so being Spaniard and slave, or being Dominican and Spaniards, mutually exclusive?
So just to clarify, when you guys say that they felt Spanish, you're speaking from like a social political standpoint, as in being Spanish citizens, not that they literally felt that they were Spaniards. Is that what you're implying?
No, they felt they were Spaniards.
I'm saying they knew that legally they were Spanish citizens. They were fighting for their right as citizens of that country, because that's the only country they knew. It's not that they thought, oh yeah, I'm as Spanish as somebody that was born in Madrid or Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were that full. But let me just add something else.
No, I'm sure they were that full.
Really
I'm sure they were that full.
Nobody did polls on those times and say, hey, what do you think about this? And,
I show you.
For the most part, when we hear about the people that were, when we hear about what the people felt at that time, what we're really talking about is what so important people that have lands, that were intellectuals. So most of the people were very poor, illiterate. They just live in a subsistence situation, that they just feed themselves, and they just really didn't care what the powerful people did, as long as they didn't mess with them. That was basically it. I mean, we need to remember what kind of the time that we're talking about here. We're not talking about the Dominican Republic today, that we have surveys and we know, we have a good idea what most of the people think about issues. That wasn't the case then. So we're basically speculating here what the people actually saw about being, okay, under Spain or the Haiti or the French or whatever,
To answer the question that Paula brought up, I think And to unite it with what you like said, I don't think black slaves in Dominican Republic consider themselves to be Spaniards. Spaniards were white, and it was an exclusive. It was probably no. It was definitely an exclusivist identity, being a Spaniard.
Mhm.
I suppose that also probably being Dominican to a certain extent because it was connected. But this is previous to the Dominican national identity, which was the 19th century idea that Juan Pablo Duarte had, right? Which is different. So it wasn't, and I also think that some mulattoes, free men mulattoes that were to a certain extent part of higher classes because there were higher class mulattoes in Dominican Republic. Who felt that they were Spaniards, but it was to a certain extent an exclusivist ideal. I mean, even in other parts, but the thing is that the way that self-perception is a different thing, right? In that kind of in that epoch.
Mhm.
So I don't think is a problem that it might be an exclusivist identity, just as it was a fact back then. And the Dominican national identity, the self perception that I'm a Dominican and my identity is independent from Spain, right? My identity is different. It's a different thing. It's not connected. Although it might be related, it's not connected. It was pretty much a new thing in the rest after the Restoration War. After the Restoration War, before the Restoration War, a lot of Dominicans felt that they were Spaniards, especially in Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo was always a very loyal part of the Dominican Republic. It was very loyal to Spain. The Restoration War was mainly a northern movement. Why? Because there was a monopoly. They imposed economics. There were some economic measurements that really hurt the north of the Dominican Republic. So while in Santo Domingo they were pretty much loyalists, right? And the Dominican conservatives were loyalists. So the Restoration War had a lot of civil war there, right? But after the Restoration War, it is when we find an independent Dominican identity from Spain, right? It can be related. It can have this notion of patrimonial, like Spain is the madre patria and all of that, but we are our own thing. That was after the Restoration, right?
So now that you said that, I actually went against like the second and third part of the question. We're still on question one. The Dominican identity during the Haitian occupation and then post 1844, which goes into the Restoration area or period. Do you guys want to add anything as far as that? Well, let's start with the Dominican identity during the Haitian occupation. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Or Haniel, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing the discussion right now, but as I said, during the occupation, I will say that Juan Pablo Duarte and los Trinitarios were the most Dominican nationalists, that we're on our own thing, we're separate from Spain, but not all that fought for the Dominican independence were Trinitarios. You have Pedro Santana, right? So many Dominicans, there were many Dominicans in the elites, in the liberal elites, felt that they were their own independent thing. They wanted independence from Spain. They wanted independence from Haiti. They wanted independence from the United States. But there was also a important portion of Dominicans that still felt that they were Spaniards, and that were loyalists to a certain extent. Maybe I don't think I will necessarily include Pedro Santana because Pedro Santana was quite an opportunistic guy. But yeah, I mean, even Pedro Santana, right? So and as I said, right, there was, remember the first national anthem of Dominican Republic. It doesn't say Dominicans, or it says Alarma Españoles, right? And we're going to protect our lands from the Haitian invasion. That's pretty much it.
So how do you guys think like your common everyday citizen of, you know, what would be DR at that time? How did they feel? How would you guys say that they
Well,
felt during that
I
period?
can only speculate because,
Yeah, of
like I said
course. Yeah, 'cause you
a
don't
moment
literally.
ago, we don't have surveys about that time, but we can go back by what the history told us. Is
Yeah.
that
Do you think that they felt Haitian?
I don't think
Or
that
what do you think?
I don't think that they felt that way because, as I said earlier, the Dominican identity was established long time ago. During the colonial period, people saw themselves that Dominican. It's like calling a Puerto Rico a Boricua today. Everybody understands what that means. At that time, everybody understood what Dominicans mean. Somebody from the colony of Santo Domingo, and we can go on the panel as to why they call us that way, but the identity was there. However, politically, under the Spanish crown, most of the population in the island didn't have full rights. And this is something that I brought. They were Spanish subjects, but they were not Spanish citizens. That was reserved for the whites. And there are many events that happened that illustrate that. I mean, there was the head of the main army battalion of the colonial troops was a black man that was born in Haiti, and he was I forgot his name right now, but he was the main the commander of the main battalion in the colony. But he couldn't go over certain. He couldn't get certain. He couldn't get raise past the post that he had because he was not a Spanish citizen. He was a subject. He was expected to serve the crown, but he didn't have the rights as a citizen. That was reserved for the Peninsulares. And we know that those kind of things happen, but I'm getting away from the question. At the time of 1821, when in 1822, when the union with Haiti happens, the Haitian president Boyer, he was already have agents in the country talking about the thing that they were offering if they were to the Dominicans that were side with him for the union of the land, of the island, mainly full rights and equality under the law. Nobody offered that to the majority of the population, not Spain, not France, not anybody else. So that a lot of people felt attracted to that and supported the union with Spain. I don't think that they will say, sorry, the union with Haiti. I don't think that means, oh, we're Haitian now. They say, you know what, they are giving us this. I don't think that's how people think. People think on their immediate need. They say, okay, do you mean I'm no longer going to be a slave? Do you mean I'm going to be as equal as a white person? Okay, and I'm for that. That doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to sign this here and say, okay, I'm Haitian now. I don't think that's how people saw the situation. And that was at the beginning. But once the reality of what happened during the 22 years of the union is that it wasn't what most people thought were expecting. I mean, the main thing, one of the things that happened is that the Haitian troops that were on the eastern side of the island, the Dominican Republic, they were not paid and they were not given provisions. So they were told to leave off the land. And that means taking food and whatever the people have at that time, that were people that were poor. Imagine, I don't Christina, you have kids, Afro-Latin, you have kids, you're in your house trying to feed your family, and this soldier come in and take all you have because they need to eat. No matter what equality they give you, you're going to say, I didn't sign up for that. And that at that point, people started thinking, okay, we need to get rid of these guys. But the idea of forming an independent country, that's when Juan Pablo Duarte and the Trinitarios and all the intellectuals that were behind him came up with this idea. Okay, let's form our own thing. Let's form this country. They called the Dominican Republic. I mean, we know what happened. We know that it was successful. But at that time, it was just only a political project that people, this apparently is the easiest way to finish this union with Haiti. And Pedro Santana has a manpower. He was a big rancher with about 3,000 soldiers. So yeah, everybody was united in getting rid of Haiti. But okay, what next? What do we do now after we're done with Haiti? That wasn't clear at the moment. It's clear for us now that we know what happened, but not at that time.
I agree with Uli, and I want to add, as I said before, it wasn't that everybody thought they were Spanish. I think that there was a lot of people that felt like a sense of yeah, we're Dominican, even though like we weren't officially Dominican up until like after the unification. But I just like I don't think that most people were like, yes, I'm Spanish, whatever that means. Like, I know that a lot of them spoke Spanish, a lot of them practiced Catholicism, but there was also a lot of people who practiced their indigenous Santeria religion as well. So I think that people saw themselves as the people that live there, the native people that live there, not like as an identity for themselves, but not as I'm this Spanish white person. I'm just this person that lives in the island of Hispaniola who speaks Spanish. And some of us happen to practice Catholicism, and some of us happen to practice Santeria. But yeah.
But basically what I'm trying to say is that a lot of, just there was an important portion of Dominicans that felt like they were Spaniards, right? And this is a fact, and this is something that we shouldn't dismiss as easily as some people do.
I'm not denying
Haniel,
that.
yeah, but
I just like I said, that's what it was. That they were Spanish territory for 300 years, and the idea, what else would they think that they are? I mean, you live on the Spanish law. That's what they knew. If they needed to get something from the government, they need to use the Spanish processes or whatever they was. That's all they knew. So,
but it's not.
it
is only. It is not a question of, oh, this is the only thing that I knew. I mean, the only thing that I know is that I'm a Dominican or a Dominican Venezuelan. Yeah, right. Dominican Venezolano, right? It is just like there was a spiritual connection, right? Look, spiritual I don't want to say not that word, but I will say that there was like a strong connection between them and Spain. Did you guys read the poem that I'm just continually bringing up, right? It's just
no, but that's just a poem written by somebody else. I have to be honest with you. I never read that poem. I never heard it before. I don't say it's not true, but I'm just saying the only Dominican anthem I know is the Criollos Valientes.
This was the first Dominican anthem. It was the first one. Of course, you're You're going to ignore it. Of course, not ignore it.
Ignoring it.
Not you. I'm talking that people are going to ignore it because it says Españoles and not. It's
okay.
It sounds odd, right? It feels odd if we maintain our present perception of what is not Dominican, right, and of Dominican history. So, but ultimately, I think that the point is that the comparison. And I don't think if you guys agree, I want to ask Yulai, Paula, and Stina to participate in this question as well. I feel the comparison between the 200 years and the 200 years that Spanish ruled the island with the Haitian occupation is not it may be useful if you want to see it as an abstract way. But when you get into the Dominican history and when you get to the nuance and when you get to the construction of the Dominican identity, it's not as clear. It's not as easy as you can.
I think it is more. If Afro-Latins, because this came from your video, if you can summarize what's your point, because this is the discussion is around this, and I think a lot of people who may not have seen your video won't know exactly what we're talking about. So
my point with the comparison is that, to me, in my opinion, I think that it is a little bit ridiculous that we would call the separation from Haiti an independence and related to the independence from Spain. When you think about it, when you think about the rest of South America, who typically, when they celebrate their independence, they celebrate it from Spain. And for me, I believe that the fact that we can sit here and say, oh, this is our independence from Haiti, I think that that is rooted in anti-Blackness and anti-Haitianism, because the Spanish came over to La Española and did just atrocities, like, and you can't compare what the Spanish did to what the Haitians did. And then I think what Haniel is trying to say, that because of the history, because there are some people that identified as Spanish, you can't, like, and with that mentality, you can't really and because they felt Spanish, right? And because it was acceptable to be Spanish in the Dominican Republic, then you can't really compare, because it's kind of like the Spanish were, I guess, they became the natives of the DR side. You can't compare what the Spanish did to what the Haitians did. But when you say that we're celebrating Independence Day from Haiti, just like we celebrate an Independence Day from Spain. So we have two independents, right? Even though the one that's most recognized, the one that if you go and you look at the internet, you say, when is the Independence Day of Dominican Republic? The first one they're gonna show you is the one from Haiti. So, and I know they celebrate one from Spain. However, if we have two Independence Days, why cannot we then compare the occupation to the colonization of a whole entire island, right?
Because it's not the same thing. The context the
Obviously.
context of the 16th, 17th, 18th century Spain and Dominican Republic is not the same as the context of the 19th century Spain, Dominican Republic. It's just not the same.
Real quick,
Dominican
guys.
Republic.
One second, Hania. Now that Paola mentioned this and how we celebrate the Haitian independence and how she feels like that's rooted in like anti-Haitianism and anti-Blackness, I think we can also tie this into the second question. Paola, I don't know if you wanted to ask that, so we can kind of keep the questions going. You're muted, by the way, Paola.
Why does actually anti-Haitianism mean anti-Black? Why is it always linked with, when it comes to Dominican, being anti-Haitian as being anti-Black?
Well, me and Uli,
does anti-Haitian equal anti-Black? That's
Wait. I want to. Sorry, Paola.
I would say yes. I would say it is all together, and you cannot separate it. And me and Uli had another like interview discussion on my page, and we talked about how there is a group of people, a smaller group of people in the Dominican Republic. They're called the FDP.
Fuerza Nacional Progresista.
Yeah.
Bem gente por ahí.
Yeah.
Yeah, bem gente.
And if you look at their whole like ideology, it's basically obviously not liking Haitians, and because they don't want Dominicans mixing with them, because they are more Black, they are more Blacker. So like, yes, that those two things go hand in hand. You cannot separate those things, because most people who are anti-Haitian are anti-Black, because they don't want us mixing with Haitians, because they don't want us to get Blacker. If you ask any Dominican nationalist who is anti-Haitian, they are guaranteed anti-Black. Guaranteed.
Paola.
We had a conversation, and one thing that I point out regarding that particular group, in the last election, they only got 8,000 votes. There were 4 million votes. So do the numbers. That's a fringe movement. So they're there, but I just don't want people to think that we're talking about mainstream Dominican party. They're fringe, basically.
Well, but even if they're fringe, I think the Dominican Republic society maintains a certain level of anti-Blackness in the form of anti-Haitianism, right? We had Balaguer, right? Mm-hmm. Balaguer was a president. I mean, he was like, after the it's funny if you read La Isla al Revés, I think, of Balaguer, he had interesting passages there.
Yeah,
Cannot
he
say
was
anymore.
very racist, and he never got a
No, but the
majority of the
interesting
votes.
fact is that Balaguer was actually a guy who he was a president after the civil rights movement, after segregation, and you had a president writing about Dominicans shouldn't mix with Haitians because they're going to degrade their race, right?
Mhm.
And of
Yeah,
course,
but
right?
they need to
I don't, I
remember
don't.
Balaguer never won an election by majority vote, and he stole a few of them.
No, yeah,
Exactly. Come on. Lo
Yeah.
más tramposo que ha habido en República Dominicana se llama Balaguer. So I
I mean,
think that when you're
his last
going,
election in 1994,
por Dios,
I mean, it was
robo
so
total.
outright fraud that he agreed to cut his term to 2 years because it was so outright of a fraud. So
And I lived in Dominican Republic back then, so I can talk about that because my father was a PRMista, Peña, and all that stuff. So guys, I can't talk about that.
mm,
So
but
I feel don't you I maybe okay, I'm going to be some subjective here, but don't you think that when you compare being anti-black as the same as being anti-Haitian or anti-Haitian being anti-black, that is so contradictory because we have so many black Dominicans and many black Dominicans are anti-black, and by saying that Dominicans think like that just because of Balaguer, who was a very intelligent, malicious man, wrote about that. And then, I mean, like, and Vincho Castillo, it's all the same group, high, middle, or high.
from the Trujillo era.
Trujillo, exactly. They all belong to the same group, like this Monsignor, I don't know who his name anymore. It's like all the same people, it's all the same group. So okay, they have a voice, they come from a particular social class. I mean, like equalizing that to everyone. I mean, or like, projecting their ideas to every. I think that, don't you think that's a bit exaggerating?
no, yeah, I think, but I think there's still a my position is that it is possible to be anti-Haitian and not anti-black. That's pretty much the position that Duarte had, right? Because the Dominican identity is inherently anti-Haitian. It was formed against Haiti. It's defined against Haiti. And of course, this is not. No, we should go and kill Haitians. Of course not. This should not be an invitation to make abhorrent decisions. Of course not. But what I'm trying to say is that the Dominican identity is defined against Haiti. It's primarily defined against Haiti, and this do not mean that Dominican Republic and Haiti couldn't be allies, right? That doesn't mean this. I'm just
we
talking.
We are in many things. Just people
Yeah,
don't know.
we are allies. Haiti is one of our most important commercial allies in the region, and that's why I think it is. But what I'm talking from an identitarian point of view, like not identitarian, but from a point of view of a question of identity, how the Dominican identity was constructed, and it was constructed against Haiti. It was also constructed against Spain, but with Spain is different. It's just a different note. Is historically different. That's why you don't have. That's why it is possible, for example, for Dominican conservatives to make this combination between Dominican identity and Spanish identity to a certain extent, or Hispanidad. But when you make that connection between Haiti, it starts to get tricky. It starts to feel like you're going against the Dominican identity to a certain extent. When you have people like in extreme cases of Haitianophilia that we can find in certain intellectuals, especially intellectuals from the U.S., Dominicans who study in the U.S. that are extremely Haitianophilic, and I don't understand why. I simply don't understand why, and I think the Dominican identity was formed against Haiti, and it was formed against everything that Haiti represented to a certain extent. Of course, it adapted certain stuff of Haiti, right?
I
I mean,
I
the
agree
abolition of
that
slavery in Dominican Republic was made by Haitians, right?
yeah, that's true. No, no, but I agree, and this is a delicate point, and I hope I don't get in trouble when I say it. When people, I don't, I think it's unfair to characterize because the country was born from the independent with 80 as something racially related. Because what was the alternative? We know it was working. So are we supposed to remain with them just because they were of the same color as we are? I mean, I don't see the logic in that. And
This
that's
is
something that I still see, for example, in the news today, when people talk about the immigration, the immigration from Haiti to the Dominican Republic, people always insert the racial question in there. Oh, they're only picking up black people. Well, most people in Haiti are black. Okay, so if somebody's coming from Haiti, there's a very high likelihood that it will be a black person, and that person is being targeted because, and when they do it, because he's trying to enter illegally in the country, not because that person is black. So when people frame it that way, I think it's unfair because what are the alternatives? So the Dominican Republic cannot pass a law to say, okay, we are not going to enforce immigration law against black people. So that wouldn't make any sense at all. So that's something that people need to keep in mind. I mean, it's not necessarily racial. The union between Haiti and the Dominican Republic didn't work, and people forget that a lot of people in the Dominican Republic were in favor of that. And even those people say, you know what, that's not working. I don't want somebody here that is going to take what little I have because they need food. And the other points that Haniel brought up, that the abolition of the Spanish language, the attempt that came later on, but that happened. The confiscation of land of certain people, and that happened. And that it was a political project that didn't work, and it had nothing. It didn't have anything to do with race. Yes, there are racist people. There are people that hate Haitian because of the race. Okay, but those are not a majority of the population. Those are fringe elements, and I don't think it's fair to paint the whole population based on what those people say. Yeah, I think there's something that just needs to be analyzed in an objective matter. I mean, the countries together didn't work out, and we have after independence we're being allies for most of the time, and that's one of the things that always pisses me off when people talk about in the media about the Dominican Republic and Haiti. They always insert something about tensions between the countries, and you say, you know what, the last war between those was before the Civil War in the U.S. That long time ago.
not only that, but I mean, the notion of I love so how like some Dominican nationalists, when you talk about confederation, they think you're a Haitianophilic guy, and you know who thought about confederation? Balaguer, because it's geopolitically. I mean, of course, it's geopolitically a good thing for a confederation between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, because we share the same island. Because when we get invaded, we're invaded simultaneously to a certain extent. This happened with the U.S. invasion of Dominican Republic in the 20th century, right? And even with France, with Spain, and with all of that, right? I mean, for me, this is going to sound like a joke, but for me, the model for the not the I don't want to say like, but confederal unification of the island should be the programs that the King of Spain had to reconquer the French side of the island, instead of the programs that Boyer had of the unification of the island. This is just like a provocation, right? But I think there is a connection between anti-Haitianism and anti-Blackness to a certain extent. That there has been a historical and intellectual connection between the two, particularly during Trujillo, right?
No, that is true. And may clarify, not deny that. I not deny that's a thing, by the way.
There might be and those prejudices might probably still exist in the Dominican Republic to a certain extent. But as I said, to fight back anti-Blackness and to fight back Haitianophobia, you don't have to condemn Spain and condemn the legacy of Spain, which is precisely the legacy that defines the Dominican identity. Because Yeah.
I don't think that's what Afro-Latins was doing. I mean, when you correct me if I'm wrong, Afro-Latins, but you were just saying
But
that.
yeah, not necessarily, but their tendencies, the comparison between, as I said, that comparison that she made is rooted in that. I mean, for example, I read there was a every time you face a person that is fighting for Haitian rights in Dominican Republic, right? One of their most common arguments is, why do Dominicans hate Haitians? Look at the Spaniards; they did the worst things, right? That's the common argument among them. I'm not saying this because it doesn't exist. This is something that I'm inventing out of nowhere, out of the thin air. It is a factual thing. Is an argument that they used to make, that they make indeed.
No, and I don't see that. I heard that argument. I don't see the connection. It's two different things. Actually, yeah, we can both regret what happened during the Spanish colony, and at the same time, we don't. We want to protect the country, which is a different topic. We don't want. We want it to be independent. We want control of immigration. That's a different thing. But by the way, a lot of people just talk about that because if you look at the numbers and the fact that there's still more Haitian people in the country, people really don't care about that issue as much as they say they do. Otherwise, they will have done something about that, which is.
But there was, that Abinader supported somehow frontier fence, So
I believe,
Smoke,
yeah,
smoke.
I believe when I say it.
no. You know what's funny? You know what's funny about that, Paula? I don't necessarily oppose that, but there was an article made by a guy. I think his name is. He had a Lebanese name, a last name, and he quoted Césaire, right? Who was this huge Afrocentric decolonial? Not yeah, he was the precursor of decolonial thought. And this guy, I think, was a huge irony from here. He wrote it in the Listín Diario, I think. He supported the project of building the fence by using a quote of Césaire. This is like using a quote of Fanon, right? To support a border between Dominican Republic and Haiti. And I find that quite ironic and quite funny, to be honest.
Paola, I think you've been wanting to say something.
Yeah, concerning Abinader, come on, you guys, we must admit, every time they must be, the president must speak about something, they have to touch the Haitian problematic. We will build a fence, we will do anything, which will never happen. And if they do, the Haitian people will construct it or make it, not even Dominicans. So come on. I don't remember, but it was end March and something politically bad happened, and then they always know how to calm some people. So, and that's one. And two, I find it very interesting, Haniel, what you said. Like you say that many Dominican intellectuals based in New York and even Paola are kind of Haitian-philic and Hispanophobic, but at the same time you say something that they always tend to say, which is Dominican identity was constructed as anti-Haitianism stuff. And from there...
No, the problem is that I embrace that and I support that. I mean, I think we should maintain our culture, our Hispanic culture, against the French culture of the Haitians. I don't disagree with that point that they made, and I think that's good. What I'm trying to say is that alliteration of anti-Haitianism should not be anti-Black. There are alternatives to go to that. So that's.
I would really like to know. What would be the other option then? Because let's say we're in 1844. Okay, we agree that the union with Haiti is not working, so it's not the Dominican Republic. What are we supposed to do then? But what replaces it? Because if separation from Haiti is being constructed as being anti-Haitian and even being a racial thing, okay, if we cannot do that, then what then?
I just want to point out that I don't think that the separation was anti-Haitian. I just think that labeling it the independence from the DR is anti-Haitian, because you're putting it on the same plate as what the Spanish did to the island of Hispaniola, to the people, to the original inhabitants of the island of Hispaniola, to the people that they brought to the Africans that they enslaved and brought over. I think that when you think about independence, you need to think about what the Europeans did when they came over and they colonized the land. I think that idea, that comparing these two independence, the fact that we call them both independence, to me is anti-Haitian, and like it's just, to me you can't compare the two. Like you can't both call them the independence when what happened was totally different.
Paula, but it was anti-Haitian. Don't you think it was an independence movement? And I don't know if you know, but in December 1821, the Dominican Republic became independent from Spain, which was very easy because they didn't care about that poor island, which was called, I guess, Independencia Efímera, like the ephemeric independence, something like that. So don't you think that in case of that Haiti had not invaded the Dominican Republic, the Dominicans, it's like Dominicans wouldn't have to celebrate a Independence Day against Haitian again. So
go ahead, finish.
You think that Dominicans shouldn't celebrate their Independence Day against Haiti, as they only were conquered or occupied, unified during 22 years.
Yeah, I yes, that's exactly what I think, because what happened during the separation only happened because of the French. Like if the French didn't come over and try to impose their tax laws and things like that, they wouldn't have felt the need to be separated.
I don't think so. I disagree with that point.
They wouldn't have felt the need to basically be separated, because the French was the one that felt like, oh, they had to impose these taxes because the French wanted Haiti to pay back, and because of that, that's why the Haitians came and they were like, oh well, so now you got to pay, and now we're gonna make it all one, and now we're gonna make you speak French. But that's all because
look how she's wait Yulia, look
all because of what the French did to Haiti.
Look, the Haitians are magnificent individuals who love liberty, equality, and fraternity. And the problem are the French. The Haitians did absolutely nothing wrong. They liberated the slaves.
At the end of the day,
can I have some clarification before you continue? When you say that the French, you're talking about when the French asked Haiti to pay 150 million francs to recognize the independence. Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Correct. I just don't think that you can compare what the Europeans did to the land to what Haitians did for 22 years. And you have to think about even the mentality the Haitians had at the time. Like, they were being ruled, they were slaves for a very long time. Like, it is not the same. It is not the same. Like, the Spanish wiped out our indigenous languages. Like, wiped out. People still speak Spanish. People still practice Catholicism. So how do we sit here and say, oh yeah, we're going to celebrate Independence Day from Haiti, and yeah, we're going to celebrate independence from Spain. However, the one that's commonly and mostly like read is from Haiti. To me, that is rooted in anti-Haitianism, and that's like one of the beginning starts of why, obviously, yes, the unification of what happened, but like even labeling it that, it gives a huge impact onto how the people feel about Haitians. And I'm not saying every Dominican feels that way. I'm just saying when you look at words, words are very powerful. And when you name it independence, I mean, there's no surprise that there is anti-Haitianism and it still continues. Like, words are powerful.
Paula, but don't you think that's a little bit logic, as the Dominicans from overseas, or the Spaniards, Dominicans from overseas, so those Dominicans, they did feel politically and legally some sort of Spanish. They were Dominican, but they were linked to Spain. And
it was because of
the
French.
criollo elitists that were there, they didn't feel that what they did during those 200 years was something that was done by Spain to them. They were part of Spain. So when Haiti came, it was the other that came. So it's logically that they will see Haiti as the enemy and not the part of the Spain, like mainland Spain, as a country or the political system where they belong to.
Yeah, and that's what I said before. Like, you're talking about the people that felt connected to Spain, right? But again, when you think about the whole country, did everybody feel connected to Spain like that? Did everybody feel that same way?
And why should you impose your Haitianophobia to everyone else? You know, not everyone feel Haitianophobic like you. But besides that,
I feel Haitianophobic.
Sorry, Hispanophobic.
But explain to me, what is Hispanophobia?
If you don't see if you don't see that in your arguments, there is Hispanophobia. With your lovely the French were in fault, not the humane and angelic Haitians, right? They did nothing wrong. They liberated the slaves. They gave equality to the Dominicans. Probably let's talk about Uchronias, right? Let's play with history.
I want you to explain
if Haiti stayed in the island, there will have been probably an ethnic cleansing of white Dominicans and probably also mulatto Dominicans, and they will have left to Venezuela and to Puerto Rico and to Cuba. That was probably the program. That was probably what will have happened if
didn't that happen to an extent though? Didn't a lot of the
that happened. That actually happened, but it would have been more extreme if the Haitians stayed. So your position, you're dismissing.
I think you're making a reference to the killing of white French after the independence of Haiti. That's what you're saying.
Not only that, but the exile, because because the fact that you said that the Dominican independence occurred only because Haiti was needed to impose economic restriction to the Dominican side of the island, right? Because of France. You're dismissing the identity of all Dominicans that view Haitians are invaders, right? And what will have happened with those Dominicans? They will have went to exile, or they will have been killed because they felt their churches were being desecrated.
I'm missing the point.
Their language was being dismissed, which was the Haitian program, right? Probably some black. Wait, Yulai, what was your question?
No, I don't know why the conversation ended up in this. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I don't know. No, but that's what
that's answering to Paola's point.
That's actually Paola's point. She's dismissing the Hispanic part of the Dominican identity when she says that.
Wow.
Look, where you like? With the okay. You're simply saying that if it wasn't from France, the Dominican Republic the Hispaniola will be unified because there were no interest to be separated from Haiti. And what you're dismissing is the cultural, the personal, and the identitarian concerns of all Dominicans that felt that the Haitians were desecrating the churches, desecrating their religion, desecrating their language,
Not
and
all.
you're dismissing them. You're just completely dismissing them. You're saying that, oh, they will have happily stayed with Haiti. Subjects of the Haitian tyrants that they have had in all of their history.
Not all, because not all people practice Catholicism. Yes, maybe everybody spoke Spanish, but there were some people that practiced different religions at the time. So we
Use the
can't act
but the
like
one who practiced Catholicism, it's okay for them to leave. No,
nobody said that they had to leave, and nobody said that they had to stop practicing Catholicism. I never said that. I never said that in my
that was
video.
that was
I
the Haitians. The
never said that
Haitians.
to
The
stop speaking
Haitians had.
Spanish. I never
They,
said that I hate Spanish people. I just said that you cannot compare it. That's it. Like
I don't see.
They,
Okay, can
I
I
don't see
address
if you're
that
question.
point?
if you're like I don't see if you're
I-
under I don't know if I'm making myself clear with the point that I'm trying to make about you dismissing the Hispanic identity of the Dominican Republic, right? Because the uh, I so I'm sorry if you guys don't if I'm not being clear enough, but that's what I'm perceiving. I'm perceiving that uh, all the Dominicans that felt that were Spaniards will have
No, well,
will
look, I disagree with Paul. Uh, uh, your name is Paola as well? Okay, that's why I'm confused here.
My name
This
is
Paola and
Paola.
Paola. Okay.
My nickname is
All right.
Paola. Todo el mundo me dice
Paola.
Paola, pero dime Paola.
No, I'm talking Afro-Latins. What's your name? It's,
Paola with an O, and
okay.
Paola is with a U.
Okay. So I'm talking to you, Afro-Latins. That's why I'm confused. Okay, because I want to address the point that you make about the comparison between independence from Haiti and the restoration, which is what you think that it shouldn't it is you say it's full or something like that. It doesn't make any sense at all that we uh, celebrate our independence from Haiti. And my answer to that, that's when the country was created. There was no Dominican Republic as we know it today before February 27, 1844. At that time, it was Duarte and the Trinitarios. Like I said, it was a political process that a lot of people got behind it.
we should celebrate the unification, Yulai. We should celebrate the unification, and our true Independence Day should be the Restoration
As
War.
I was saying,
right?
the Dominican Republic did not exist before February 27, 1844, when it was created. I mean, that's the only reason we celebrate independence that day, and because the country didn't exist before. We got our independence from Spain first in 1821, but that wasn't not something like a popular revolt. It was basically the elites at the time, during the last day of the colony, that they wanted to join the Simon Bolivar Gran Colombia. And a lot of the people that were behind it, one of the reasons they wanted to do that was to preserve slavery. Remember that we think that the Simon Bolivar and the people that fought with him in South America were, very, progressive people. That was not the case initially. They promised to abolish slavery, and they didn't want to do it. And that's why in 1821, what Paula was referring to earlier, what we call the Independencia Efímera, because it was too short. It only lasted a few weeks. And the country that was created was called Spanish Haiti, the Republic of Spanish Haiti. That came well away pretty quickly in 1822 when the unification with Haiti came in. And after all the thing that happened, that people decided, this is not going to work. Everybody got behind Duarte and the Trinitarios to declare independence and form this country that we call now the Dominican Republic. Like I said, the country didn't exist before that, so it's not illogical to celebrate independence that day because that's when the country was created. It's as simple as that.
How should we call it?
Please let me
Paola?
finish. Regarding the restoration, which I think Paula Afro-Latin said, okay, that should be that's not as important as independence. It is in the mind of the Dominican Republic.
I mean,
we celebrate the heroes of that independence. Every time the president does a speech or something in one of the national holidays, they said something at 177 days from independence and 126 from the restoration of the country. Look at every speech of the president. It always starts like that. Luperón, who was one of the main leaders of that rebellion, is a hero in the country. You find his status everywhere. There's even a province called Restauración. there are places. The airport in Puerto Plata, it's called the Luperón Airport. So to say that we do not celebrate and we do not give in that the restoration as important as independence from Haiti, it is not accurate. And finally, as I pointed out before, the Dominican Republic is not the only country that only celebrates independence from another country that is not Spain. Uruguay got independent from Brazil, Panama from Colombia,
Paraguay from
Uruguay,
and Paraguay from Argentina, from el Virreinato del Río de la Plata.
That's true.
Yeah. So
Paraguay used to be part of the United Provinces of La Plata, independent. That's a very important point. We look at the republics that we have now in the American continent, and we probably think that everything came out just like that after Spain left. No. Mexico, after independence, is basically, that it occupies a bunch of territory in what is now the southern part of the U.S., but it also occupied, it was the countries in Central America. Remember the Mexican Empire, and then they separated and became the countries in Central America became the United Provinces of Central America, and then they became independent. They do choose to celebrate independence from Spain, but when Mexico first. But I just wanted to point out it wasn't as clean cut like, okay, Spain is gone and all these countries just came out. It wasn't like that. So it's not really weird. What happened in the Dominican Republic with Haiti is not weird compared. It's very common. It happens in many countries in the Americas.
A process of nation building. Actually,
also, how should we call it? Separation from Haiti?
I think it would be better to call it a separation from Haiti, because to me, I think that calling it the independence holds a very strong hold on.
I also think we should call it separation from Spain, and but so sure. Let's get that point. Let's call both of them separatist movements. But
you want to compare,
but I should add separatists, but at the same time the expulsion of the Haitians invaders. I think that's a good term to call instead of calling it the Haitian independence, the Dominican independence necessarily.
Sorry.
Okay, Paula, go, and then I'm going to move on to question 3 because we're almost at an hour.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So Paula, going to ask the next question.
So, Paola, so if I understand, so you say we cannot, of course, compare the Haitian occupation, invasion, unification, whatever, to the 200 years of colonization of Spain, but you say no, it happened, that Spaniards wiped out the indigenous identities, language, religions, and all that stuff. But isn't that what Haitians also did a bit? They wanted also to wipe out the Dominican identity that they had, religion and language, which is a very important unification factor. So they also closed universities. So isn't that the same a bit? It didn't last, of course, because it was only 22 years. So you cannot do a lot of things. So what's the difference actually? Because
I think that the difference is that what Haiti did only happened because Haitians were colonized, and Haitians that went over and did that stuff to people of their own race are people that come from, because we're mixed, but to me, I think that Haitians and Dominicans are one race. We're all.
Oh, that's not true. That's simply not true. That's simply a construction that you made up right now.
So for a Haitian to come over and to try to do what a white person did to them, to their own people, those are people that are internally oppressed. So people that hurt themselves, that hurt people from their own race, are internally oppressed. You're doing what the oppressors did.
Go ask a mulatto Dominican that was part of the Spanish administration if they felt they were fighting against their Haitian brothers.
Regardless if they felt that or not, the Haitians were internally oppressed. The Haitians that
regardless of what they felt or not.
Be
No,
quiet.
Regardless.
Let her finish. Let her talk.
No.
Haitians that come over and do something like that, your brain is already colonized to do things that your own colonizers did to your own people. So you're gonna go and do that to your own people, even though they didn't see themselves obviously at being as the same, but just like the mind of an oppressed person, a Black oppressed person that does that. Those are like I don't know if y'all know Candace Owen. Yeah, do y'all know Candace Owen?
Mm-hmm.
The African American.
The lady.
Yeah, she's a Black woman, a Black African woman that talks about her own people.
Well, a lot of Dominicans in the U.S. too, by the way.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
no, I agree. I agree with you, but that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you do that to your own people, you are internally oppressed.
They were not their own people.
Upset. I'm not saying that they were, but for me, for you to do that, you have to be very indoctrinated by your oppressors, which were the French. But they go do that to people that look like you. Like, I'm sorry, you just can't compare it, because the Haitians that came and did that, they were internally oppressed. The French that did that to the Haitians, the Spanish that came over and did that to our people, that brought the Black people and Indian people, it is not the same. They came with a totally different mindset and came over and messed up the mindset of the people that were living there.
They're not the same. That's why we shouldn't compare it.
Exactly. So why we call both?
Okay, so why are you comparing them?
But why? So why we call them both the independent?
Okay, let's not compare it.
So we call
one restoration, the other one we call it independent.
I didn't do it. And my whole point was that they already put that on the plate. They call them both the independents. They did it themselves. So I'm just bringing it out and saying, it
was a separation. It was an expulsion. The Dominican independence, let's put it that way. Let's use the word separation, because you seem to really like to position yourself from the Haitian point of view rather from the Dominican point of view, right? Let's call it the silly Trinitarios who were separationist movement, traitors to the Republic of Haiti, right? Let's stop calling it independence. I agree with you. Let's call it expulsion of the Haitian invader, and let's call the Spanish Restoration War. And I know you probably wouldn't make this step, but I'm willing to make it. I think the Dominican. I find that Gregorio Luperon was a separationist guy who basically he was a separationist, right? So yeah, it's the same thing, right? But I just don't see your point right now. There's no, of course, we agree. They're not the same. We shouldn't compare it, and you compare them.
But the DR already did that. The DR did it themselves. I just brought it out. So in my video, I brought it out. I said, how is it that they're comparing it? So I went together and I compared it myself. I didn't do that.
You compare it to say that
I made the comparison.
You compare it to say that we should hate Spain instead of Haiti because the Haiti were our liberators. And you even had the guts to call the Trinitarios and all of them separationists. Because
I never said that in my video.
In your mind,
I never said that.
You just say it. You said I would call it separation instead of independence. So in your mind, you're positioning yourself as if you were Haitian. So
I'm not positioning myself as I was Haitian.
When people are suspicious about your what's the name of these, your loyalty to Dominican Republic, because you seem to.
I'm not a patria. I don't believe in patria. I don't believe in patria here in
Black. Right, you're Black.
Patria for the DR. I don't believe in that. I believe in I believe in
that's a
being a human being. I don't believe.
Oh yeah, sure,
I
sure.
believe in just
Thank,
what
thank
we
you
should.
for admitting it. But in your belief,
I
but
don't have a problem with admitting
but
that.
in your belief of these I don't want to these extremely naive view of I believe in human beings. In that belief, you seem to take the position of the Haitian Republic, which I
No, I never
find quite ironic. I don't know, Paola. I don't know, but
I never said that. That's what you
no,
think.
no. You're literally when you're calling the Trinitarios and the independence movement of the Dominican Republic a separation, as if they were a separate, as if they were like Catalans or Basques against Spain or something. I think there's something. I think
That's
it really says
you.
a lot about you, about
I
you.
don't believe in patriarchy because when people sign up for
You're against,
patriarchy,
you're
you
against the Dominican
sign up.
Republic and the
You
Dominican
sign up for
identity. You know why?
oppression.
Because you study in the U.S. and you are influenced by Afrocentric ideals of your progressive universities, and that's why you hate Dominican Republic and the Dominican identity.
I never said I
You
hated
even,
Dominican
I mean, you
Republic.
even
Let's not
said
get
that.
extreme now. She didn't say
You
she
will,
hates
I never
her.
said that. That's what
you
you
know,
say.
you probably wouldn't even mind if all the white Dominicans would have been expelled of the Dominican Republic and we would have
I
our
never said
own
that.
black
I said my
Dominican
grandma's white.
in La
My
Hispaniola. Of
grandma's
course.
white. My great great
Yeah,
grandfather was
you
white.
would rather speak Creole than Spanish.
Okay, now you just put. Okay, you're generalizing now.
Right?
Okay, y'all. Let's move on
Exactly.
to the next question, y'all.
Actually,
An
I have
hour
a
and a
question.
half. Huh?
Yeah, and I make my notes here. Paola, you answered my question. I wanted to asking you, aren't you afraid that people are going to think that your reasoning based on feelings, based on what you feel, and not on facts or historical facts and political whatever movements? So yeah.
Why aren't I
The
afraid that?
Haitians were
Can
alienated.
you
That's
say the
why they
question
raped
again?
Dominican women, right?
Exactly, because you say, I feel that when someone oppresses someone that looks like them, don't you think that history maybe has shown us that people oppress people that look like them just based on political interests, on power and
No.
money? So don't you
People
think that? So you think that in Africa, Black Africans that still oppress Black Africans that look like them feel
yep.
oppressed? Don't you think that there is more than a? So you think?
Dominicans were not racially similar to Haitians. The idea of negritude, which is pushed by Haitian nationalists like Jean-Pierre Price, who said that negritude was the thing that united Dominican Republic and Haiti, and that Hispanidad is what separates them, and we should abolish Hispanidad in the Dominican Republic, which is pretty much our program, of course. Um, uh, but the Dominican Republic was a mulatto nation. The blackness of Dominican Republic is a mulatto blackness. The blackness of Haiti is not a mulatto blackness. It's a different identity. It's just a different identity. They're different beings. They're different racial beings. To say this, Let's, this is. I'm not trying to say that they're like ontologically different or not. Of course, they have
Uh,
human dignity, of course, but they were racially different. One were the blacks in the Dominican Republic. The majority of them are mulattoes or mixed race. The blacks in Haiti are not like that.
Okay, well,
oppressed people.
look, when I felt uncomfortable when we inject this racial stuff in historic matter because we
Exactly.
just tend to ignore by focusing only on the racial thing, we just ignore what actually happened. And
Mhm.
the Haiti happened with the support with a lot of Dominicans, most of them non-white, who were looking for equality. So the racial argument should have been thrown out of the window that way. It was a political situation. Hey, I want rights. I want equality.
Yeah,
I don't
but
want to be a slave. Haiti is offering
Uli,
that. Yeah.
can I just add something to what you're saying? So you're saying that you're saying to separate the race thing, right? But in reality, right, the people that wanted to be free and wanted to be unified with Haiti because they wanted to be free. It's not because they wanted to be Haitians, right? They were just like, I just want to be free, right? You're gonna give me the same kind of rights as lo peninsulares, then of
Correct.
course it's a racial thing. It is a racial
Yeah,
thing because
yeah.
you're not
Have
gonna
I been
reduce
there? Like, I was like, yeah,
you're
I want that.
not gonna say that the slaves were the same as the peninsulares because they were black. Yes, there were some mixed ones. There were some black slaves. There were some mixed free black people. However, it was a racial thing. So we can't say that it's not a racial thing. I'm not saying
No.
that.
That's
But the
But
Dominicans
not what I'm
are
referring. That's
the
not what I'm
Dominicans
referring to.
are
That's not what I'm
black.
referring
They're
to.
not
What
black.
I'm talking about is people ignore that moment. That moment when the majority of the people say, you know what, let's unite with Haiti. They are giving us equality. They are offering freedom. I want that. If I have been there looking like I do, I'll say, yeah, I'm for that. I don't want to be a second class citizen, third class citizen, whatever. But then what happened? I'll go back to my farm to do whatever I do. I don't know, maybe I have some cows and stuff like that. Next thing I know, these two soldiers from the government that was supposed to free me come in and take everything I have because they're hungry. And I said, okay, I didn't sign up for that. Then
Burn and
I
they
find out, please let me finish.
and they
I
censor
find
their
out
law.
that the government of that country that promised freedom to me now want me to help them pay 150 million francs to the France. And I said, okay, I didn't sign up for that. By the way, the people in Haiti, they were not happy about that either. So there was a consensus in the whole island that was not a good thing. Then the government of that country that freed me and gave me equality now wants me to, instead of working on my plot to feed my family, to work in plantation because they wanted to produce money to produce hard currency. By the way, because that was the thing during those times. Plantations was how most countries made money. But the Dominican Republic never had a plantation economy. The Haitian government wanted to transform the island that way. So it was an economic thing. And what the closing of the university, that's one of the many things, the confiscation of the property of the church. There were a lot of things that didn't have to do anything with race. That people say, you know what? We didn't sign up for this. I just wanted equality. I didn't sign up for any of that. So when Juan Pablo Duarte came in to say, you know what, we need to separate from Haiti, a lot of people say, yeah, I'm for that now. I'm going to back this guy out because I don't want this situation, this union with Haiti didn't work. And what I'm saying, there's nothing racial about it. There wasn't anything racial. Well, there was at the beginning, yeah, it was racial because I was being discriminated because how I look. But at the end of it, it wasn't. I just wanted to separate from Haiti because this isn't working. Let's try this thing now, the Dominican Republic, that, yeah, it was successful. And that's when I say, why this is instance that I'm talking about, when I hear you talking about mulattoes and come on, man.
Yeah,
I
don't think that you can separate race from all of these issues, because when you look at the backbone of what happened when our country was first made, it was made on a caste system. And people have this like notion that just because the caste system was done away, that like the mentality of like the caste system was done away too. It just doesn't happen like that, especially when you still see linguistical patterns in the way we speak about color in the Dominican Republic and obviously all over Latin America. Like, where do you think that those linguistical patterns come from? They all come from the caste system that was built. That's a system.
I agree. Totally agree, 100%.
Our thing. And I'm not
complaining about.
I'm not saying that there isn't a class problem. There isn't, a sexism problem. I'm not saying that those problems don't exist. I'm just saying that you can't separate the racial issues that we have in the DR from the class issues, because all those issues are intertwined. And I think that the biggest issue that Dominican Republic has now is that we like to call it like colorism, right? But you can't separate colorism from racism, because colorism is a direct tool that came from racism.
How will you solve this, Paola? Will you expropriate the land of all the whites in Dominican Republic and all the Dominican elite? Will you do that? Will you do that? Come on, just say what do you want.
But that's not what I'm saying.
We have an example of Haiti who did not treat very well that white population.
Talk over me. More respect, Haniel. Calm down. Jesus.
No, I just want you to say what's your program then?
I'm saying that if we really want Dominican society to progress, Dominicans need to dismantle the unhealthy relationship they have with colorism, with race, because all that is part of why we have a classist system. It's not a separated issue. It is not a separated issue. We like to think about it like that. We do like to think about it like that, but it's not a separate issue. Yes, we have classism problems, but that goes hand in hand with colorism. Why do you think DR has such a high rate of people go over there to exploit our women? Because our country is seen as a Black country, so they exploit our country for sex tourism. It's not because it's not because it's poor. It is not just because it's poor. Let's not sit here and act like.
Wait. So when Europeans go to East Europe, are there what are?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, real quick, since we're talking about,
I think
wait, Tina, she mentioned something important, and I want to get to the question. There's an important question here, and this is related with the questionnaire that you put.
Well, hold on. I was gonna say though, since we're talking about race and colorism right now, let's skip 3 real quick and just go straight to 4 and 5, which is racism in DR, is it systematic, and the colorism aspect, and y'all can talk about that.
I think it's a good thing to fight against racism, right? But there are good forms to do it, and I will say that I'm a defender of the status quo of Dominican Republic right now. Because what's the alternative? What is the alternative? Haiti? I don't think so. There is social mobility. There is social mobility in Dominican Republic right now, right? There has been social mobility. There has been an increased middle class. One example of that is the mobilization of the middle class with the loss of political power of the election, right? So, of course, there's stuff to solve in Dominican Republic. Of course, the majority of Dominican Republic elites are white, but is that necessarily a demonic thing? I don't think so. I don't think it's not necessarily a demonic thing. Of course, it should be a gradual change. But what is the alternative? Are we going to expropriate all the white Dominicans? We're going to expropriate the lands of land.
Honestly, I don't say that when you keep talking about this.
Wait, Julia. Wait, don't get silly at this. Don't be silly.
No,
she's talking about structures of power, and we should dismantle the class and the race system. That's what she's saying. Don't get your silliness. She's actually quite radical in this regard. Don't be funny about it.
Let's get rid of the white.
It may as well be, but I mean, it's
wait. If you want to get Stina, if you want to get rid of the racial hierarchy of the Dominican Republic, and I agree, there should be a gradual movement for more equality.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about dismantling and these radical approaches, I think she's imagining the assassination of white people that Haitians did in the I don't know. That I'm just making that there might be a possibility.
Get rid of white people just to have a more racially balanced society. Is teach white people not to be racist. I mean, you don't have to get rid of them.
I'm sure Haiti has a partial balance. So not so much because of immigration and a few mulattoes that stayed in Haiti, but I think there's a lot of Black representation in Haitian elites to a certain extent, and Haiti's not doing great in compared to Dominican Republic. In contrast to Dominican Republic, so I don't think that. Of course, there's social mobility. That's not a bad thing, and social mobility is, to a certain extent, racial mobility. But does that mean we should dismantle the whole system? I don't think so. I don't think this radicalism is going to solve anything in the Dominican Republic.
I have a question, Paula. Why is it a bad thing? What's the problem with the Dominican elite being majority white? Would it be different? Would the country be different if the elite was majority black or mixed?
I don't think that it has to be. I don't think that it's good that majority of them are white. I think it needs to be a mixture. However, you can have people that look like me and be in power and still have these people that look like me keep their people down. And those people that do that to their own people, again, are internally oppressed. Whether y'all like it or not, people that hurt their own people are internally oppressed because you uphold the same standards that your white counterparts or your lighter skinned counterparts are upholding in order for you to stay at that status. I'm not saying that they all have to look like me. I'm saying that everybody who's gonna have power really needs to believe that we are all equal and that we can, and that everybody can have equal opportunities, right? But we can't have that if people don't talk about classism, sexism, colorism, racism, which are all issues that exist in the Dominican Republic and everywhere around the world. It's not just the DR. Like, but my issue with our people sometimes is that we like to separate all of those issues and just say it's a class issue when it's not. It's all of those issues intertwined. But again, people that look.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, continue. Sorry.
People that look like me can definitely keep their people down. Like, because there are people in the government in the DR that are dark, that are black, right? It wasn't the president that gave back the power to Spain. Wasn't he a black Dominican, Pedro Santana or something? Yeah,
well,
like
he was a criollo, but there was another person who was a mulatto who supported Spain.
Yeah.
So like I don't think that they all have to look black, right? I just think that they all have to have the common goal of dismantling this hierarchy or belief that being whiter or whiter skin is the best way to go and the only people to trust. Like there can be white Dominicans, peninsular Dominicans who are fighting for those things. There definitely could be those people, and I believe they exist. However, are we there yet? Completely no. We're not there nowhere.
Wait, Paola.
Wait,
Paola. Yula, I want to make a question. Do you want to dismantle the Dominican class system?
Yeah, it has to be dismantled.
Okay,
How?
You said everything with that. With that. Okay. You want to dismantle the class system, right? So you have a socialist program.
I don't have any kind of program.
And you want to dismantle the class. How do you dismantle a class system, right? Expropriation, revolution, right?
Yes, revolution.
And the Dominican Republic,
yes.
The class system of Dominican Republic is connected with race. So how are you going to dismantle the Dominican class system? Are you going to expropriate the whites?
I never said expropriate the
whites. She's not willing to. She's willing to talk, and she doesn't give me names. She doesn't give me names. Give me the names of the ones that you're going to expropriate and you're going to cut their heads.
Haniel.
No, Haniel.
She's not serious. She's not serious about what she believes.
What's the solution?
I want to dismantle the class system. How?
Yes. I believe that there needs to be more equity among people in the Dominican Republic and even here in the US. Like, if you think that people hoarding money is okay, then that's on you. You believe in a class system, a hierarchical class system where most people who are white should be at the top. If that's what you believe, okay. I don't believe in that. I also don't believe that our ancestors believed in that either. Our ancestors, meaning our indigenous and black ancestors.
I'm sure they certainly had a hierarchy.
Yes, they had a hierarchical system, but there is nothing compared to the kind of poverty. The poverty that we see now is nothing compared to the kind of poverty you see back in the days before we were colonized. It's not.
Oh, okay.
You cannot compare.
Were you born in the Dominican Republic? Sorry. Oh my gosh, Christina, I was supposed to interview, but are you born in the Dominican Republic?
No, I was not born in the US.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that explains a lot.
But
But
you can't compare. You cannot compare what was happening in Africa or how the Tainos had their lives situated to when the colonizers came over.
we're not even talking about that. What I'm trying,
And
there's always going to be people that command, and there's always going to be people that obey. This is pretty much a universal thing.
Okay, I think we were talking
the
about
Taínos had
racial-
the Taínos. Wait, you like the Taínos had caciques. Okay, but what I'm trying to show you, and I think it is to you guys, the racial. I propose, let's say I'm a reformist. I propose social mobility. I propose all of that. I think it shouldn't be. It should start. It should start to look less racial. That social system, right? That's social class hierarchy. It should be less racial. I agree with that, and I think we all agree in that. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But in the Dominican Republic, the racial hierarchy to a certain extent is connected to the class hierarchy. All right. So if you want to dismantle the race hierarchy, you need to dismantle the class hierarchy. But when I ask you, what are you going to do? You don't say anything. You start to talk about change of mindsets, change of culture.
I never said that.
You don't say, but you don't. No. The thing is, you don't recognize what is necessary to dismantle the
You
class.
want me to
Look,
answer?
I don't think that for the progress of this debate, I don't think it helps. We're trying here to help to try to. We just have to take people at their word. She said she's not going to do that. Let's believe her. I mean, you can make your own inference, but what's the point? You're just keeping.
It is important.
I'm something that she haven't said.
I'm Dominican. I'm Dominican and Venezuelan, right? And I have the. Although I live for most of my life in Dominican Republic, I think I'm thinking about Venezuela, right? And the discourse that Chavez and Maduro has is precisely that one. You know, we have white elites that govern our country and are exploiting the poor brown people. Okay, what did they do? What that discourse basically eliminated the Venezuelan middle class, and now we are the majority of the middle class. There's no middle class in Venezuela, and the majority of middle class in Venezuela left the country. Some elites left the country, and now we have these new weird elites of military guys and a mix and some new money Syrian Lebanese people. So your arguments invite for that. Your arguments are destructive in that sense. Your arguments are simply destructive because they're radical, and people here. Apparently, I'm the only one who perceives them as radicals, and you think is this we're dancing kumbaya in this racial paradise and in this racial and class paradise, right?
Haniel, she has not said that. Okay, let's take her
Yeah,
at
he
her
likes
word.
to put
Okay,
words in her mouth.
I'm talking about the implications. I'm talking about she needs to talk about how she's going to dismantle this.
Why? Okay, she already said what she thought. Let's believe her and let's move on. We have like 10 minutes talking about this thing, and it's getting frustrated.
All right, y'all.
She said she's not for that. Let's believe her.
So that was pretty much question 9. Kind of skipped ahead. Well, since we're on the topic of the elites, I guess we can go backwards to question 8, which is the role of the Dominican elites, and then them being either descendants of the Spanish criollos or these new European and Middle Eastern immigrants, which it sounds like a lot of the elite throughout Latin America, they're actually Arab descendants. Is that correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Well,
Many.
Latin America,
they
mostly
mix between
Lebanese
the.
from from that area, they have done really well because a lot of them were Christians, and they easily passed as their Mediterranean stock. I mean, they passed like the Spanish elite that was already there. So
They mix.
it was easier for them.
They intermix. The Lebanese. I'm from. I myself from Lebanese descent. They intermix with with the criollos probably.
No, that's what it was easier for them. It was easier for them to, and they work hard.
That's a question, Ulises. Do you think that they became successful because they could pass because they're Mediterranean, or because they came from an Arab culture where building businesses is very important, and they have this mindset that everywhere they go, they go directly into politics. They value education and businesses. You had in Ecuador, Bucaram as president, Bukele now in El Salvador, in Argentina, I forgot, Menem, Jacobo Magluta. Okay, he was president for 6 months or something, or 6 weeks, I don't know.
42 days.
It was 2 days only.
42 days.
42 days in the 80s, I remember. Anyways, so everywhere they go, they excel, actually. Medicine, athletes, politics. And I can say that in Europe as well. They're always in politics. Is it because they can pass, or is it because they come from a certain culture and a certain mindset?
I think the mindset is the most important thing. That they work hard. They were small business people. And, as a migrant, we don't think about that unless we're migrant ourselves and we don't have anywhere. Like in my case, I went to live with my family, so I have some place to land. But if somebody tells me you're going to have to go to live to Europe and or whatever else, and you're going to have to find out how to live, I better have a plan and better know how to do it, which is what they did. I mean, we're talking about those people mostly came in at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th. It's not that they could go get here and they have a lot of money, people throwing money at them. They had to work. So they had the work ethic and, the cultural thing. And and it helped that they could pass. I mean, if you see somebody from Lebanon and you don't hear him talk or hear her talk, you wouldn't know that. You probably think it's just another white person.
So would you guys say the NDR right now is in its majority actually Middle Eastern and not like Spanish descent?
No. It's a mix between they're intermix. They're intermix.
Yeah.
So why?
I didn't hear the question. Tina, can you repeat the question?
Oh no, I was asking if you guys believe that the white elite in DR right now, if they're mainly Middle Eastern descent and not Spanish descent.
We need to be careful with those type of arguments, because it's the same thing that people talk about the Jews, that we don't have white elites, we have Jewish elites and some bullshit like that.
Oh yeah.
No,
they
most of the white people in the Dominican Republic are still Spanish and Italian from that part of the Europe.
After the Republic.
I have a question.
After the Republic was built.
Why is it that Dominican people don't have that mentality to work hard and become part of?
Who said we don't? Who said we don't? I mean,
because it seems like it's becoming easier for these people to come over and to take these positions, right? Because we're saying that a lot of them now are part of the high position in the Dominican Republic. So why is it that
the main thing is education? One of the main problems that we have, and that goes directly to what we were talking earlier about racial consciousness, is lack of education. I mean, you cannot. You're talking about a country when there was a survey, an official survey done a few years back among all the teachers in the Dominican education system. 70% of them failed to have the basic qualification to be teachers. Damn. Think about that. You have people teaching that are not qualified to be teachers, and they are paid.
Why is that happening? Why is that happening?
Corruption. I mean, we live in a corrupt.
Because of the whites. Because of the whites.
Political unwillingness. Oh my gosh!
That's the thing. That's what that's why I say we are hard workers, because otherwise the country will be really screwed. I mean, and that's one of the things that basically bothers me about the corruption in the country, because the people work hard. People work hard. You go to any restaurant in Wendy's, whatever, in Santo Domingo, and they treat you like a king, because that person that is working in a cashier or making you a hamburger, that person needs that job to live. I mean, it's not okay. I have this job because my mother didn't give me money and I wanted to have some cash. No, I need this job because I need to feed my family. So people work hard, even at the most menial job that they can get. That has been the salvation of the country. And yeah, but most of the productivity, less and less, there has been progress, and people are less tolerant of corruption. What we call el tigueraje. Yeah, people are getting tired of that thing, because the people realize, it's basically destroying the country.
What's driving the corruption? What is driving the corruption? Why are they corrupt? Like, why do they want to be corrupt against their own people?
I guess it's a cultural
it's a cultural thing.
It's the same thing across Latin America, and sadly that's one of the inheritance we got from the Spaniards.
Thank you.
Because that came from the colonial period. I mean, the elites of the colonial period, that's how they behaved. They didn't produce anything.
That was the Spanish, the whites of now, not the crown.
What's that?
That was because that was the Creoles, not the crown.
The criollos.
Yeah, okay, all right. But they have this mentality that they have. That's a good point, because the people from Spain, they were the ones who had the power. The Creoles, because they were under the Peninsulares, they had to pretend that they had power. And that's when the clientelism came in. You had to impress the people by giving them stuff that.
But I don't know. I don't think we can reduce the success of a country, of a class, to merely a question of culture or work ethic.
But you guys want to say that within Dominican culture, there is a lot of emphasis placed on pleasure and having fun and partying. I mean, what are one of the first things you hear about when people talk about Dominicans? Oh, they love to party. That's like one of the top things people say.
I mean, but look at the example of.
I think that has something to do with
Tina.
Kind of why we kind of remain in this state.
No. Wait, Tina. No. I think there's a problem with this type of arguments. It's a huge problem. Spaniards, when you talk with Northern Europeans and they ask, and you ask why Spain is doing so bad, they say, "Oh, they're lazy. They don't work. They take naps." Spaniards actually work more hours. Yeah, and Spaniards actually work more hours than everyone else probably in Europe.
But
no. It's a graph. It's actually a data that they work more hours than those Northern European countries. So I don't think it's that. I don't think that's a problem. It's because we like to sunbath ourselves in the Caribbean. That's why we're poor. No, it's not that. We like to do. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem though.
I agree. I don't think that it should be like, because like we have a more, I guess, like a lax kind of mentality. Because honestly, I think that that's something that keeps Dominican people healthy. And maybe something that like the rest of the world needs to learn. It's grind culture. Like if you live here in the US, it's all about the grind culture, right? And it kind of takes you away from humanity and just like trying to be like, just live.
It's the aristocratic sense of enjoying life that Protestants do not have, of course. But I mean, I don't think that's not the problem, though. I mean, that to reduce everything to work ethic, to culture, there are economical systems of exploitation that are effective, and they're something that we shouldn't ignore.
But I think,
but of course, those systems are not necessarily the ones who are the definitive factors of development. Of course not. But it's a multiplicity of factors. I don't think. In regards to the Lebanese, in the Dominican Republic, it was actually a stigma for the Creoles to marry Lebanese people. So, but that changed, of course. I mean, I don't know. I will say that in this point, we should study like the sociological factors at that time, and and if the Lebanese migrants were educated or had skills. I mean, Lebanese are famous for being good commerciants, right? Even in their own
Good
country.
traders. Yeah, they
Traders, yeah.
brought
Commercemen,
business
yeah.
practices that were not common at the time. In fact,
No,
a lot
exactly.
of people complain about that they've been that the competition, because they basically provide so more products they weigh than
And you know what's
the
funny
traditional
is
way.
that well, you know what's funny is that when the European migrants came to Venezuela, for example, uh, people say they were like Jews, like they were like Jews because they work like Jews and they because of the work ethic, right? But I don't know. I don't know if we should reduce the success of a group of people merely to a question of work ethic. I think in the case of European migrants, to a certain extent, they had social benefits that black people did not have, you know. But it's just a multiplicity of factors. We cannot reduce everything to oh they had success because they passed as whites, which is not true.
No, I didn't say they pass as white. I said they pass as locals.
Yeah, but it's just like I will say that it's a multiplicity of factors, and actually, like at the beginning, there was a stigma for Creoles to mix with Lebanese people, with Arabs and so on.
No, I agree.
Okay. Paula, do you want to move on to the next question, whichever ones are left? Because we kind of been skipping around and jumping around. You're muted, by the way.
You're muted.
Sorry. So, which was Cristina, you can ask tú la última pregunta. You can do it. I lost it.
Okay.
All the questions that I don't remember anymore.
Okay, so we haven't done 3, 6, and 7 yet.
Oh yeah. Me jodió esta vaina. You can proceed.
Okay, so something we can touch on really quickly.
Yeah.
So going back to this whole thing with like whether being anti-Haitian, being anti-Black, or just anti-Blackness in general. So there are two particular groups of people that came into DR historically, which were the African Americans that went to Samana, and then also the Cocolos. For anyone who doesn't know, who's listening, who the Cocolos were, they were English-speaking Caribbeans that went to DR to work in the sugar cane fields, like in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? And so with them, you see kind of a different reaction in that their cultures were kind of assimilated into like the mainstream Dominican culture. Like there wasn't so much of a rejection of them that maybe you saw with the Haitians. Like for example, I know when it comes to the Cocolos, like a lot of their music is what we now hear as like carnaval music. Like I think the steel drum came from them, right? The steel drum that you hear a lot of music, I believe that came from them. And then with the Samana Americans, I mean, I know there's like certain foods that came from them, like Luyanike supposedly came from them and stuff like that. So parts of their culture became what is now Dominican. But again, there's like that contrast with like Haitian culture, I guess. So I guess the question was like, have you guys witnessed that or seen that, and why you think that is? I know you guys have said, a few of you, that you don't really know too much about the Cocolo. So Paula, if you want to chime in, you can add anything too.
No, okay, that was actually a question. Like, why do we feel, or do we have the impression that when it comes to Haitian culture influence on us, Dominicans kind of rejected, and when it comes to the Cocolo, like guavaberry and everything, and pescado con coco, peje con coco, and that kind of things, we absorbed it into the Dominican culture.
But I don't think that we after the occupation, the separation from Haiti, independence from Haiti, a lot of Haitians actually stay in the country. They just didn't leave. The troops left, but yeah, but the people that move here stay here. You know, supposedly about 10% of the population, and I don't know if that includes the new migrants of the Dominican Republic, are of Haitian ancestry. And that was even before there was Haiti as an independent country, and and the Dominican Republic, a slave will escape from there and move to the eastern side of the island. And that has always been happening. So I question the premise that we didn't absorb or the Haitian didn't assimilate. I think they did. And there are a lot of elements in our culture that actually came from that side of the island, and that we see it as Dominicans.
Well, what are some of those things that you know of?
Chin chin.
The only thing I really know is like, well, Gaga music came from Haitian.
Yeah, something like that. No, and the thing that I remember seeing a news article about the fact that during the Trujillo era, a lot of people who were of Haitian ancestry that have been living here for since the independence actually changed their names to some more Spanish. And I know that because my mother's name is Bidot, and she's from the old Bidot, but that was not the that was the Spanish, you can call it like that, way before that. But I know people with my same last name, Bidot, that they were originally called Bidot in spelling in Spain, Bideo, as it's spelled in Spain, in France. And they switched to the Spanish pronunciation to the Trujillo era because they said, okay, I don't want this guy to come after me. A lot of people did that. So the Haitian people, they have always been in the country. So I question the premises that we accept the people from the West Indians and not the Haitian.
Well, not so much the people, more like the culture, their cultures. It just seems like there's more of a rejection of the Haitian culture, but there wasn't a rejection of these people who also were Black. That's more the question here. Like if y'all believe that to be a thing, why or why not?
I honestly, I don't know how to call myself an ignorant of that, because I know about the attitude today about what people perceive as Haitian, but when I say there are a lot of things from Haiti that, I mean, they probably, the people that came from Haiti during the unification period, they have their own customs because it was a different culture after all, and today they probably were absorbed into what we call the Dominican culture. There are many things about all culture that they're very similar to the way they are in Haiti. Maybe because, you know, cultural traits. I mean, because you see them across the Caribbean. And when for example, I know people from Jamaica, and when I interact with them, a lot of it's amazing. I tend to look, it's like us, but in English. Because regarding the food, the culture, except for the religion, because they're mostly Protestant and we're Catholic, but there's so many things in common that it's hard to say which came from where. It probably a lot of it came from the same set of circumstances. Even the food we eat. I mean, slaves were not afforded the best cut of meat, for example. So we learned to cook certain things that the white usually threw away. And I was surprised when I was given something that the Jamaican call oxtail, and I said, no, I don't know what that is. And when I ate it, oh, that's a rabo.
Yeah.
We just call it rabo in the Dominican Republic. So
yeah,
I wouldn't doubt that it's the same situation with Haiti. A lot of the things that are common from that culture are not part of ours. I cannot tell you which one. You will need a better expert, because I'm not. I don't know a lot about that. And what happened with Paula? She went to sleep.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay,
I'm back. Sorry.
I think we should engage with the sixth question.
Okay, I know Afro-LatinX has to leave in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we can just end with question number 6 and just not do question number 7. So the final question is, why do Dominicans lack a Black or Afro consciousness? Why wasn't there a Black conscious movement in DR?
I think it has a lot to do with the construct of the identity during the history, but a lot of it I feel like it has to do with like the Trujillo era, because like especially like with the whole like Museo Hombre de Humano.
El Hombre Dominicano.
Yeah, like most of that museum was made up of like the travelers, so the people that traveled to the Dominican Republic. Like a lot of the museum was based off of their writings and and I think we spoke about this, the comparison between the people that traveled from like the Americas and from France and from Spain, they wrote a lot of they wrote a lot about the Dominican Republic, and they compared it often to Haiti. And they always compared us to Haiti as being the whiter people of the whole entire land. And a lot of that museum is made up of those writings. And yes, there is obviously like the African side now. And I know a lot of it was added more around like the 60s and the 80s, but I think it's because of obviously history, and a lot of it is the Trujillo era. But I do think that there is a growing movement for accepting the Blackness within our culture. I think it's growing a lot more now, especially because women are being more women are accepting their hair. I think a lot of it is rooted in our hair. And because I know a lot of people are like, oh no, it's because Dominicans just like to look beautiful. But it's kind of like, I hate when people say that, because it's kind of like you're saying like, oh, you can't be beautiful with your curly hair. And not to say that you can't wear your hair straight, but I think it is a big issue when we're seen as like, oh, you can only like be beautiful with your hair straight. But I do think that the Black consciousness is growing in the Dominican Republic, and especially because of women.
I do think women have kind of spearheaded that as well.
I think to answer that question, I mean, this is a very historically speaking, it is funny to see like how even in the late 19th century, when travelers came to the Dominican Republic and asked a Black Dominican or a mulatto Dominican, like, what are like, are you Black? And they say, yes, I'm Black, but I'm un negro lavado, right? So I think it is the racial construction of the Dominican Republic, which is, as opposed to Haiti, is very mixed, which creates this sort of tension to a certain extent, right? And also because Dominican Republic defined itself nationally speaking, against a group of people that are clearly Black, like the Haitians. So that has a lot to do with it, with the lack of Black racial consciousness in Dominican Republic. Also, the construction of the national identity by white Dominican elites, right, try to hide Blackness at all cost. At all cost. I mean, it is interesting because in Dominican Republic, instead of the revitalization of nationhood that in other countries occur with their indigenous people, right? In Dominican Republic, that happened after the restoration, and that happened with the revitalization of the image of La Princesa Ana Gaona and all of that, right? But Dominican Republic is the Taino element of Dominican Republic is, I would say, tertiary. Of course, in some northern parts of Dominican Republic, there is an important Taino element, but it's not the same as the Black element, right? So also Trujillo, I mean, he called Dominicans. I mean, you see some Dominicans that are Black or mulatto, and they call themselves Indios, right? So that's I will say that's like, to a certain extent, racial schizophrenia, what Trujillo imposed. But I think the fact that I don't know if it's going to be possible to have a strong Black consciousness in Dominican Republic. First, because of Haitians. Second, because of the racial construction of Dominican Republic. They're more mulatto, and they're mulatto, and that's the problem. That's a problem. Like, not everyone identifies themselves as Black necessarily. I think it is good to have some racial consciousness. I mean, I'm not a Black person, so sorry if I'm going into this route. But for me, it is necessary to have racial Black consciousness, but not to the extent of of the alarmism that I'm trying to, sometimes you can call it alarmism, but not to the extent of hating the other. You know what I mean? Which is something that we can see in certain parts of Haiti, even here in the U.S. So I don't think having I think Black racial consciousness is a good thing to fight for your rights. You know, the hair, the aesthetics, the representation might be a good thing as well, but that shouldn't translate itself into necessarily an anti-white discourse, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree that there is. I perceive actually that is greater racial culture when and that I have not heard overly, but obviously I'm not there. But I go by what I can see, for example, in the media, because the media reflects the image that the people have of themselves. And when I was growing up back there, and Paulo she clarified about that because I only used to watch this channel Telentillas, and everybody was white in the news. You know, I watched the news shows, and everybody was white. And at that time, I was a kid. I mean, what the hell did I know? But it was after was older that kind of caught my attention. It's no longer like that. If you watch Dominican media, if you watch Dominican advertising, it's Black people everywhere. It reflects more how we look as a people than those times. So I I I don't know if it's is it directly related to racial consciousness, probably, but I think it's an increase in education. We have to be conscious that even though we remain a poor country, we have too many problems. There has been progress. We are more educated somehow. We earn more. In the past 20 years, 25, 30 years from now, people are actually going hungry. You have to send your kids to work. I mean, so there will be food for a family. So if you had to worry about what your kids were going to eat at lunch or on dinner, yeah, there wasn't a lot of time to think about racial consciousness, even though that might be related to your situation. As people, you know, are better fed, you know, their material needs are fulfilled, you know, and they are more educated. They have to, you know what? Why do I have to? Why everybody's white around here? So not everybody looks like that. Why everybody's white in TV? Why
But
don't you put somebody that looks like me? Do you mean that I
also,
cannot get a credit card or a bank loan or buy a car? So
I also want
yeah,
to highlight where, Paula, you have to leave now. Yeah, you can.
Because my son's about to
Okay,
wake
now.
Okay.
Um, but to what you're saying, Uli, like again, like even in education, like my grandma, she grew up over there. My mom grew up over there, and my grandma, una blanca, she's a white passing mulata because her dad was Black and then her mom was white. But she grew up over there. She went to school over there, and she didn't learn about her Black ancestry. My grandma grew up saying, "No, Paula, you don't have no Black in you." Right. And I'm not saying all Black, like all Dominicans are like that, right? But even my mom, she grew up over there and she went to school over there, and that's what they taught her too. So I think that because there was a lack of Black history, and I'm not saying in all parts of the Dominican Republic, but definitely it existed because my own family came from that, and that's what they learned and they told me. Obviously, it was part of the Dominican history books, right? I think that it has changed, and yeah, like you're saying, like, you know, if they're trying to struggle to feed yourself and stuff like that. Who's thinking about Black consciousness? However, it I feel like it wasn't in their education, and it wasn't there for a reason. And I think that
no, I agree.
I think that um um it is a racial issue. It's not only an educational issue, but it is rooted in racial issues that was trying to be hidden from the people, so people don't have a Black consciousness to want to fight for the better of just people in general, right? But got y'all have to go.
All right. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Paula.
Yes, yes.
Sorry for
Okay,
screaming
so-
at you.
No problem. Have a great day, y'all.
All right.
Right.
Ciao.
Right.
Uh,
I find that very interesting
in
whenever
regard
I hear
to
people talk about like their parents or grandparents and how they had this belief that they had no black in them, even though like I guess in the case of her grandmother, she had like a black father. So it's just interesting how like there's that cognitive dissonance, I guess you could say. Like, how
that
do you have
might be
family and then think that you don't have black in you? Like that's
that
And that's
that
also my question. And I would like you guys, especially Lisas Queres and Mayor, to enlighten me about that. I come from a family, large family, where there is no black consciousness, but I never heard that kind of things like we have no black in us or like we are white or whatever. I've never met in my life a black Dominican saying that he's not black or denying his blackness and calling himself Indio. To me, that's a lot of Instagram. Like Dominicans deny their blackness, they say they're Indio. When I, as a kid, heard like more like Lo indio lo mató Colón, aquí no hay indio. So it was actually more thanks to those DNA videos of people that I discovered, like, oh my gosh, we still have some Indian DNA. I thought it was less than 5%. And some blogs, and there is un señor que se llama Jorge Esteves, who looks very Indian, and some Dominicans, making that movement like, oh, we're still Taino, we have some Taino in us. So sometimes when I hear that kind of things, I'm like, what, like, where does that come from? That I know that in the media, because I understand the media, and you've worked in cosmetics and marketing and all that stuff, you know that you have to create an aspirational model. Just like when we Dominicans think of Venezuelans, we all think they're all white. However, when you go to the cerros in Caracas, or here in Europe, you see Venezuelans, they look blacker than you said, no, it's impossible that a person is a Venezuelan, no, because they look just like us, regular people. So I know that in the media, and it's changing in the DR, and if you compare the DR to Puerto Rico and all those countries, we've always had more mixture than the other ones. When you look at the Mexican novelas, you think everyone is a castizo, mestizo, or white. So I understand that when it comes to the media, and it has been a lot of changes in the Republic, especially with El Canal 4, Telemicro, where Gomez Diaz began, with black and mixed Dominicans. So that's for the media, and still the elitist TV channels still have their preferred people from the Dominican elites, like Milagros Herman, Pamela Sweat. If that doesn't change, it will never change. So those channels stay elitist. And on the other side, like where Haniel, like the Dominican elites, which Dominican elites did the impossible to hide the black existence of us, like where and how? Because otherwise, how come we know that Salome Ureña was, I guess, a mulata? One of our founding fathers was a mulatto. Perón era negro, Luis Cicero era negro. Like,
in the case of, I think you can find it in the literature. In the case, for example, of Pedro Enrique Ureña, el hijo de Salome Ureña, he never mentions any. He knows that he's mulatto, but he never mentions like feeling proud of his black ancestry. He talks about yo soy descendiente del hidalgo right? So I think they might be referring to that. I mean, in Dominican Republic, there was never a literary movement that in other parts of the Antilles, like in Martinique, in Haiti, yeah, never happened. Yeah, never happened. It never happened. So that's an interesting point. That even happened in Cuba, right? The question of negritude, the question of revitalization of the black part, that never happened in Dominican Republic. And I think that's because, to a certain extent, at least to some Dominican intellectuals, this notion of blackness, of negritude, was Haitian propaganda to a certain extent. It was pushed by Haitians to promote a de-Hispanization of the island, like Jean-Pierre Pierre, that guy, right? So there's a multiplicity of factors. In the fact that we are neighbors of Haiti has a lot to do with it, right? And the tensions that we had with Haiti has a lot to do with the fact that there has never been revitalization of Black culture to a certain extent. And I mean, that has his
Yeah,
that has
I guess look, the thing is that you just mentioned something about it, and the thing is in the mind of the media, of the opinion makers, they cannot they cannot they cannot get away from the from looking at the racial aspect when they talk about the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Like that was something that we can do something about that. It is a fact that Haiti is a majority Black country, and it's a fact that we're not. That's what it is. Just historical fact. We know why it happened. We know the level of slavery in Haiti, and you know that it wasn't that big comparatively in what it turned the Dominican Republic. That's what it is. We didn't create that situation, and the fact that when we have conflicts with Haiti related, for example, to immigration and things like that, people immediately try to give it a racial connotation that shouldn't have. Just happened two countries that happen to share one island. One is majority Black, the other, more mixed. That's all there is there. There's no reason why people need to insist on looking at it as it was a racial matter, which is what I was trying to point out earlier.
Mike,
I think we need to look to it. I personally look with suspicious with a sense of suspicion in regards to those Black conscious movements in Dominican Republic, right? Because sometimes I think it's just like Afrocentrism, extremely Haitianophilics. I think Paola, I'm sorry if I'm mentioning her without her being here, but I'm sure she'll look this video. But Paola is an example of that. How there's a connection between Black consciousness and Haitianophilia, right? So I don't necessarily trust that, right? I don't necessarily trust that, and I know it sounds suspicious from I don't consider myself white, but in the Dominican Republic they consider myself to be white. From a white Dominican, let's put it that way, to talk like that, right? But I don't know. I mean, I'm just suspicious about that, about Afrocentrism and about all of that, because it is Haitianophilic. I mean, to call the Trinitarios separationists and to say that and to expiar de las culpas de los haitianos because it was because of the French is Haitianophilia, and that's actually what they tend to do, those Afrocentric Black consciousness Dominicans, to a certain extent. But
I guess you want to separate one thing from the other. Yeah, they might be something like that. I don't deny. I'm not going to cast a person and say somebody did that. And separate from the fact that we have to be more conscious of who we are as a people. And that's what I was talking about earlier, that I feel good that in the media now, there are more people that look like me. Because when I was growing up, I think I thought maybe I cannot buy a car or anything because none of the ads advertising for banks and stuff like that will put people like me in front of the camera. That's changed now. Even the government, most of the models were not very representative of what the Dominican people look like. That had changed, which is a good thing. And I don't think it had to be. You have to call it Afrocentrism or is European centrism or whatever. It's Dominicans. This is what we are. This is how we look.
I don't oppose. I definitely do not oppose what you are saying. I'm just saying that there's una línea that is like that, and we need to be careful with that to a certain extent. Although I don't know. I mean, that's basically the ideology of Dominicans that study in the Northeast, basically, right? So. And I mean, in those circles, the Haitian Revolution is a huge myth of inspiration and all of that, right?
Don't you think it was? It was inspiring because it was inspired by the French Revolution, and the and the Haitian Revolution is actually something magnificent that inspired the revolution in South America.
The Revolution was
my position. Wait, you guys know my position.
They were the first Blacks that they fought for their, for their independence, for their freedom. The other ones were given their independence and their freedom. So it was una llama que encendió muchas
Yeah, but
revoluciones.
I
So
mean,
it is something magnificent.
I think I'm not quite a revolutionary.
No,
Um,
we're looking at
of course,
history.
if we see it as black slaves killing their slave masters, of course, there's some poetic element of that. But then I think of, okay, these black Jacobins invaded my country and tried to de-Hispanize the Dominican Republic.
That's
They
something else.
basically instigated disorder in all of Latin America by supporting our revolutionaries. Um, so I'm a refractario to a certain extent. I'm not
No,
a
no. Look,
and that's
it
my
was
position.
how
But
it was the way politics was done during those times. I mean,
I don't like them. I don't like Haiti, not because they're black, but because historically, okay, I don't mind Haiti now. I don't like 19th century Haiti, not because they're black. I don't like them because they're French.
Wait, but they were not French.
Right.
The majority of people in Haiti.
Their ideals were
Okay, they
very
were
French.
inspired, of course, by égalité, fraternité, liberté.
Horrible,
You know, the French
horrible. That's
for
horrible.
for the French, but that was for the French people.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and
no,
they
but
tried
what?
to impose that égalité, fraternité, liberté to us Dominicans, and we expelled them.
No, they
Thank
didn't
God.
try to impose
No,
that or
No,
to
they,
let's
they were
support
the.
I
that.
see your
I mean,
point, but
Boyer was like a little Napoleon to a certain extent,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't like Boyer, because he was like a Napoleon.
I
Yes, but we're
understand your
looking.
point. I understand your point, Haniel, but you're talking about politics in the early 19th century. That's how it was resolved, and Haiti knew how to play well that game. I mean, we don't. The people that were for Spain don't like it, but that's how things were done at that time. You fought against your enemy any way you could. And that's
No.
what they
Yeah,
did.
You
I
fought for your
understand that,
interests. I mean,
It's
like
just a political thing. I mean, I
exactly.
but
understand
we
why
need
you
to
don't
be
like it, but
careful about the fact that they mythologize the Haitian Revolution. A bunch of leftist circles here. I mean, there's a publication. The name of them is Jacobin, not because of the French Jacobins, but because of the Haitian Jacobins.
Mhm.
There's the Black Jacobins. I mean, the myth of the Haitian Revolution is this huge mythology of liberation, of oppression, that is like, it symbolizes something from leftist movement, from decolonization movement, and all of that, right?
Mhm.
And that's why for me it's important to say, no, I don't support that. Of course,
But have,
it,
Mhm.
I don't support that in the sense that what they did to the Dominican Republic, they tried to destroy our Hispanicity, just like the French revolutionaries destroyed Occitan, destroyed the church, destroy all the regional language of France. They tried to do that with us, the Black Jacobins, and that's why I don't embrace that revolutionary spirit of the Black Jacobins in the Caribbean, of the Caribbean.
L'Occitan is still spoken in
But
Marseille by
but
old people.
they tried to destroy it. That's basically they basically all the priests that spoke uh,
Occitan.
Breton, Occitan. What do you know? What they did? They sent them to the boats, and the Jacobins basically um, bombed the boats.
But Haniel, aren't you afraid that people would think that you are judging history based on feelings instead of facts? Is there a reason to be
No,
calm?
I'm not. I'm judging history from the perspective of defending Hispanidad. Nothing else. No, it's not about my feel. Of course, there's something around my feelings. Of course, I don't mind.
But
But I'm defending Hispanidad because I
but that
identify with
okay, but
Hispanidad, and I
but
think
it
that's
that
seems that you're mad because you were on the losing side. That's what it sounds
no,
like.
no. I mean, I actually, if we okay, let's compare. I think it was a good thing if we live historically that we separated from Spain in the Restoration War. Why? Look at Puerto Rico. Look at Cuba. I think those are the biggest examples of it was a good thing to be separated. It was a good decision to separate ourselves from Spain. But I'm not in the losing side. I mean, I mean, losing side or not doesn't matter. That happened like 200 years ago, 100 years ago, right? 200 years ago. But
That's true.
technically,
no.
we expelled the Haitians invaders, the Dominicans.
Yeah, I think
But
on
what
the
I'm trying
topic
to
of
say
the
is
Haitian
that there's
Revolution,
a
I think it's a
mythology.
good thing.
Wait. You lie.
By the way,
in the
it's
mythology of
Ulises,
the
it's
Haitian
Uli.
Revolution, the
Why you call me
Dominicans
Ula?
are the bad guys. In the mythology of the Haitian Revolution, the Dominicans are the bad guys.
But of course,
And that's the perspective that the university leftist students have about us, about the Dominican Republic. That we wanted to maintain slavery. That we didn't like the Haitians because they were black, because we wanted to maintain slavery because of this and this and this.
I heard that.
Mhm.
I heard that before.
Yeah.
And I read some of that, and they're wrong.
So you're telling me, so in this sense, we should all be against the Haitian Revolution because we're just for the simple fact that we're Dominicans.
no, but one thing doesn't have to. Come on, no tiene que ver con la
One thing
otra.
doesn't have to do with the other, you know?
That has exactly
Yeah.
our
Those
shared.
black
what's
Jacobins
amazing about
were
the Haitian
instigators of disorder in La America Hispana by being.
Again, you're talking like you're angry because you lost. You call it disorder, and they said they were just advancing the political interests. I mean, that's
Yeah,
Of
exactly.
course, but it was
Yeah.
problematic.
No,
You know, Bolivar went to Haiti to gain the weapons and support.
You know what, before we move away from the topic of the Haitian Revolution, because that's something that I always found funny. I don't. Have you ever seen the movie Spartacus, or do you know about the movie Spartacus? Yeah, they at the end they rebels against the Romans, and when they were finally captured, they were trying to find out who was the leader. Who is Spartacus here? And then all the slaves start saying, "I'm Spartacus," and yeah, because that they made a movie about that. All those guys were killed. They died. They lost, and they are celebrated. Haiti was the first slave revolution ever to succeed and build a country. And
But as I said,
think they should have a movie like.
But that's
Spartacus.
but
Yes.
as I said, you're positioning yourself as like just this abstract fact, the slave killing its slaveholder. Of course, is a awesome thing. I don't mind that. But then you start thinking, oh, so then they invaded Dominican Republic and then they try to destroy our culture. So that's, and I'm not trying to be abstract. That's the problem with being abstract. For example, liberté, égalité,
Liberté,
fraternité,
égalité, fraternité.
and all of that. That sounds cute. That sounds good. That sounds
For the
awesome.
French.
For the
Yeah,
French.
but
But
one thing that you
but
need to remember-
what if you are a Breton? What if you are a Breton, and these Jacobins are killing your family in the name of liberté, égalité, fraternité, right? You know, it's not. Those are abstract stuff in the end. It's extremely abstract.
No,
At the
I
end,
just like I said, when I say that, I'm talking about the actual Haitian Revolution, the slave rebellion against the French, and what they built, and all the consequences of that.
But we need to be
France
careful
lost
with
their
that.
empire here on the Americas.
We need to be careful with the Haitianophilia, because then we have people like Paola. Sorry if I mention it with her presence, that says that the Trinitarians were a separatist group, right?
But that's something else. That's
a different
something
thing.
else.
And
That's a different
it's not
thing.
a matter of what you call Alteniphobia. Yeah.
Philia.
It's not that. It's just looking at the reality of how they got their independence and won their freedom. That's a momentous in the moment in history. I'm talking about the Haitian Revolution. Okay, we can talk in another string. Otherwise, we're going to spend this. Going to last like five hours about what happened afterwards. Yeah,
the Dominican occupation by the Haitian is not the consequence of their independence. Their independence is something
I think
else.
It is the consequence.
No, because it was how long after? 30 years after, 20 years after.
Yeah, but they needed
that's
to
politics. That's politics. If they didn't have us next to them, they might gone to Jamaica.
You're starting to think in abstract terms.
No, people or governments or groups invade others when they need something from them. If they think you cannot give them something, or they can get something out of you, they won't invade you. I mean,
But
like that geopolitical strategy.
Yeah, it's a geopolitical question. And when you don't think about the geopolitical problems, then we're
there are problems, but one thing has nothing to do with another. Their independence is it's something to be celebrated. It's something unique. and it's something, maybe not really recognized worldwide or something. I don't know, but that has nothing to do with the rest. And it was inspired, of course, by the French Revolution, and that in Haiti inspired also all the other separatist movement in Latin America. And something that people sometimes we don't think about is that the Haitians that started their revolution were actually not the I cannot say like the Haitian criollos. They were bozales, los bozales.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were born
new,
and raised military men from Africa. They were
so
not like the rest.
basically was importing slaves
That's-
that were actually soldiers.
They were soldiers in their countries. I mean, like they knew about things. So it's a very different. People only think, oh my God, they were slaves. Wait. Those in Haiti, people lived and on average 4 years because the plantation was so high. But the production was so high, and actually the French greed is what caused that. Because come on, like you had like the ratio was 80 or 90 to 10. Like of 100 people, 80 persons were slaves, were African slaves. Like those persons lived 40 years, so they had their conscience. They were not black people that were born and raised in Haiti, and those guys were actual military. Come on, military guys, and they organize their stuff. So I think that sometimes people tend to ignore that. They think, oh my God, just so pobrecito, no sé qué. No, there was something. Come on, and they knew, and it was not like that the news of back then was like nowadays with Twitter. Everything. It's like they heard about the French Revolution, and they were also military guys that said, hey, we also want those principles, égalité, like I say that you got liberty, fraternity, and equality, and all that stuff. So I think that sometimes we tend to, yeah. Actually, yo iba a ser una parte, yo iba a ser moderadora. In the discussion.
And then they invaded us, pretty much.
Yeah, 30 years later, but one thing has nothing to do with another, Haniel.
They actually declared the unification of the island during their independence.
Yeah, because they needed
money. Yeah, they needed to. That was their program.
Am I defending it? Of course not, but that's history.
No. I know you're not defending it, but I need to position myself in that history.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Okay, and that inspired a lot of movements, of course. But the thing that happened by Negros Bozales. They were military, it was different. It was a very different movement than in other countries, and they got their liberty. They were not given their liberty. So I think that's something, algo muy interesante, peculiar, interesting thing. And there should be like a big Hollywood movie about that.
I will call
that should be a Netflix miniseries. If I had the money, I would pay for a Netflix miniseries.
I would invest in that.
I will call them instigators of disorder.
Instigators of the new world.
Instigators of chaos. That's what they were.
No, of the creation.
So you think that they should remain slaves? That's what you're talking about?
No, of course not. No, you lie. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, because that's what the other
what
option.
I'm saying is that I'm positioning
what you call instigator of disorder.
I'm positioning myself as a Dominican, as a defender of Hispanic culture.
Oh no, okay, that's a different topic then from the
But of course, I agree. It's laudable to kill the slave master, right? I don't disagree with that.
No, I didn't say that there was
especially if they're French. More.
You just don't like French people.
Let me clarify that. It was Jean-Claude it was the Salines. Actually, who ordered the killing of all the French whites.
But he wasn't a bad guy.
Please let me finish.
It's just politics, you like. It was necessary to do.
Ulises, not you like. Ulises.
Ulises Bidot. Ulises Bidot. Oh.
Mi nombre es Ulises. Okay. The Salines, he ordered the killing of all the French whites, and they didn't obey him. To make sure people follow his order, he went with his army from town to town to make sure that they kill all the white French they could find. So that's important to know.
But that
It's
was
not that the
all
Haitian went
military
crazy.
tactics.
Please let me
because it
finish.
was necessary to do it. It was simply necessary,
No,
as if it
no,
was
no.
necessary to kill
Definitely.
all the mulattoes to reach the liberty of the black slave. You know. So
Please
what are
let me
you talking
finish, man.
about? That,
Let
I'm
me
using
finish.
the
No,
same
I'm just
logic.
clarifying the point because people talk about that as if the Asian just went crazy and started killing all the white people they could find. No, it wasn't like that. Dessalines basically forced the people to do that. They were in Haiti, there were Germans that were not the slave masters, they were traders, they were left alone. There were Polish people that allied themselves with the Haitians during the revolution, they were left alone. Any other white that wasn't French, they spared it. I'm not saying it was a good thing that they killed all the white French. I'm just clarifying that it was not this crazy thing that we're just killing all the whites, like people are saying. Dessalines gave that order and made sure to enforce it by going with his army from town to town to make sure that the order was carried out. The
And if it
people in Haiti
wasn't,
didn't want to do that.
and if
That's
it wasn't,
important.
and if it wasn't carried out, he would make sure that that person that denied the order was killed. It's a military tactic.
Mhm.
We cannot be. Come on, that has always been. That's something that sometimes I ask myself questions. Why do we tend to look at history with a lot of emotions? Those things happen, and what happened in place A also happened in place B. That it's always the same thing.
But we need to position ourselves in history. You know,
Oh,
we need to position ourselves in history, and I always try to make that. I will say that I'm ideological to a certain extent. I defend Hispanidad, and I don't mind that. And from that perspective, I think that Haiti were not necessarily a good thing.
but defending Hispanidad, you don't have to be anti-Haitian
No, no,
revolution. You don't have to be anti the Haitian revolution.
not. I mean, it's useless right now, right? But I think,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily useless because how that's basically a huge factor among like Afrocentric circles, among like extreme leftist circles, among decolonization theories. You know, if you say, I mean, it is important to highlight that not all people feel the same about the Haitian Revolution necessarily.
But don't you think that those people at the west coast of the U.S., those intellectuals, they try to give some sense or explanation to the Haitian Revolution and also the Dominican history with their U.S. ideas or U.S. ideas that were created or born from the U.S. history. Maybe that's why they tend to look at it with a lot of emotions or in the distorted way or something like that.
I think they're like two positions. They're like the white supremacist position, oh, they kill the whiteys, and there's also the Afrocentric position and the leftist position, like, oh yeah, they kill all the whiteys. But I don't know. I don't know. I just that's why I go against that, right? Because I don't like Anglo academia.
Me, I also believe that you cannot look at other histories or social and political movements with ideas from your own. We cannot define or defend or arreglar or solve problems in Saudi Arabia with Dominican ideas or Dominican.
No, I think no, of course, but I mean the difference is that the Haitian Revolution is part of our history.
Yeah,
right.
that's true.
It's not like we're going away like the Japanese and so on.
Mhm.
But I think, I mean,
Right.
you can have a descriptive point of view explanation of the history of the Haitian Revolution, and then you can have an ideological one, and I don't think it's necessarily bad to say this is my position and this is why I have this position,
Yeah, you're entitled to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Yula has to leave, I think.
Uli.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Uli. Why you keep calling me Uli, man?
You're like
I'm Anglo.
Anglo. Anglophobic.
Anglizando tu nombre. Uli.
Ulises. ¿Tú no sabes? Yo no know Ulises.
Claro que sí. De hecho, yo creo que... No lo
I'm
tengo
going to
aquí.
start calling you Han.
Haniel.
Sí, Sería como que Haniel, una cosa así.
Haniel, eso sería en España. Haniel, hombre.
No en España, sino
Haniel.
porque es un arcángel hebreo, Haniel. Entonces sería como que
Pero con esa ja. Ja.
esas vainas,
El-
las lenguas semíticas que tienen esas cosas.
Sí. Él es ángel en hebreo, yo sé, él.
Okay.
Ángel significa es como que una declinación.
But
¿no?
I honestly, I had to
Oh,
start
Dios.
getting ready to
Okay.
leave. I had to pick
All
up
right.
my son's
Yeah.
food, and I had to
Okay.
pick up a few things to take care of. So,
Okay.
All
Mira,
right.
Well,
it's
thank
been
you,
great
Oli.
participating in this panel.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Or-
Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Christina, please send my payment the usual way, you know. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't talk about that. All right.
Bye,
Bye.
Oli.
Take care.
All right.
Sorry for being uncivilized and screaming and accusing Paola that she wants to kill all the whites and expropriate their land.
Y'all crack me up, man.
I just get
passionate.
too passionate and emotional.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and emotional. Oh, he
Why?
admitted it.
Why? Because
Mhm.
because I'm not Anglo. I'm not Protestant. Let's put it that way.
Oh, anda el diablo. Qué verdad. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that I won the debate.
You think so?
So point yourself the winner, huh?
We don't have to win debates. We have to acquire more knowledge from debates, or people think. Don't you think so?
No.
It's not
Of
about
course
winning
not.
because
This is-
if you
this
have
is
it,
No, I
winning,
won.
you're not learning.
No. This is instead of weapons. This is words, right? So I don't. No, I'm just kidding. Debates. I don't believe in debates. That's Anglo-Saxon witchery.
You don't believe in debates?
Oh my
What?
Debates are Anglo-Saxon witchcraft, pretty much.
Wow.
But I mean, well, so I mean, I don't think we need the ways to combat Haitianophobia is not with Hispanophobia, and this is the main issue that I have with some people. That, and if you guys don't think that Paola was being Hispanophobic, I don't know what you guys are thinking about, because this is the same thing, you know. Spain this horrible did. Why guys you hate the Haitians if Spain did this horrible thing? You should hate Spaniards more. This is basically the argument of all of these arguments, right? My perception of when I say I want to clarify some stuff when I say that anti-Haitianism, I'm referring to that Dominican identity is defined by going against Haiti historically. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be allies. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be commercial allies. That doesn't mean anything. I actually think a confederation in the future wouldn't be a bad thing because we share the same island, and we certainly have, to a certain extent, because of the fact that we share the same island, geopolitical interests in common, right? But when I say that Dominican identity is defined by going against, when I say that Dominican identity is anti-Haitian, it's because Dominican identity, historically speaking, is defined. I'm sorry if I'm being essentialist, but I'm essentialist in this point. Is defined against Haiti. Why? Because Spain is defined against France. You know, as simple as that. So
Okay, I was going to ask you that if you've kind of adopted like the issues that Spain had with France, if you kind of incorporated that into your own feelings of like the Hispanic Dominicans against the French Haitians.
It's only an impression. It's only an impression.
It's only an impression.
That's what it looks like.
But I think that was the perspective that many Dominicans had to a certain extent.
You think so?
With the addition of racial issues that white Dominicans had with Black Haitians, but I don't mind it. I don't engage with the blackness. I engage with the Frenchness.
Interesting.
So no, it's a historical thing. I mean, it was Napoleon III who destroyed our empire. Well, come on. It was Napoleon the third that it was Napoleon, not the third. The Napoleon that destroyed Spain and basically made it a backward country for the whole of the 19th century, and on us included. Besides of Argentina, and I mean, yeah, I just don't like France necessarily.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's a and that's a problem. The problem we have is that we don't see the deep connections that we have with Spain, and we don't see that we inherited all their problems, all their qualities, all their issues with modernity, all the issues with the Anglos, all the issues with the French, we inherited from Spain, right? And all the issues with the Brazilians, right, that Latin Americans had.
The
That's
other.
also, yeah, that Paraguayans, Uruguayans. This is another thing, because when you see this argument that I don't like to say Hispanic. I'm sorry if I'm deviating, but this is like the last thing of the of the video. But I mean, I don't like to be called Hispanic because of I'm including my colonizers, right? Okay, so I'm a Paraguay. Let's suppose that I'm a Paraguayan, right? Would I want to include Brazilians who organized a war that killed 80% of my male population into my identity as Latinos? So I mean, in the end, yeah. I mean, why would I want to include the Brazilians who pretty much organized a genocide in Paraguay? And it was actually La Guerra de la Triple Alianza, pretty much, which was, or it was Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil against Paraguay. And the main instigator of that was Brazil and the power that Brazilian elites had over Argentinian and Uruguayan elites. And they killed 80% of the male population of Paraguay. They needed to reinstitute polygamy in order to survive. So would I want to be included with them as this like Latino identity? Those Brazilian colonizers, Brazil inherited the Portugal spirit of destroying Hispanic America. Columbus, I don't like Columbus. You know why?
Yeah.
Because Columbus was a spy in the service of the Portuguese crown, probably. And then I'm being hyperbolic, but Columbus, the imperial idea that Columbus had was pretty much the Portuguese one. Let's create factories and explode the coast. It wasn't the Spanish model of imperialism. The Spanish model of imperialism is the one of Isabel, who when Columbus brought the Indian slave, Isabel he fell to the floor and cried, So that's why I think Isabel, the girl boss, should be the example of Hispanidad and not Columbus. Also, Columbus, I mean, look, all the Masons of our countries, all the revolutionaries of our countries, Francisco Miranda, Colombia, he put Columbus as this full figure, and he wanted to call Colombia Columbus because of that, right? So that's smelly to a certain extent. Also, like in the U.S., how they love Columbus. Why they love Columbus? Because I don't know. Because of that. That's why we shouldn't embrace Columbus.
Okay.
I'm just sending my ideological message.
¿En serio? Really? Oh no. No me di cuenta.
No, but I think like all like those like Hispanistas that really like Columbus, we should stop liking Columbus. He wasn't he wasn't exactly our guy.
Columbus was just a guy doing his job. That's it. He was going to India normally. He was going to trade. He was doing things. Like, guys, people, don't look at history with emotions. It's just facts, things that happen.
No. The problem with that,
you cannot hate or love.
The problem with that perception is that history is not exactly a science. It can have scientific elements, of course, but history is not going to have neutrality in history is really hard to find in the historical interpretation. You can aspire to it, right? But you're always going to take a position to a certain extent.
You're always going to romanticize something and be subjective because it's not like a hard science. It's not math. So, and it also depends how you look at it. For the French, Charles de Gaulle was an amazing person. We have also a street in the Dominican Republic. But if you ask a Senegalese person, what do you think about Charles de Gaulle? So
I mean, but he ultimately supported the independence of Algeria.
Yeah, and he killed a lot of people that went to ask for their money.
before
He exterminated. Come on. So, the same with Winston Churchill. Come on. He and the North Anglo Americans are ones of the responsibles of the things that happened in Iran in 1954. So it depends how you look at it.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that I'm
Right.
positioning myself as Hispanic, who
No,
wants to defend
that's right.
Hispanidad, and that's why I don't like Napoleon. That is why I don't like the French. That's why I don't like the English. That's why I don't like. I think the Portuguese could be our friends, but they need to renounce their love affair. They need to renounce their affair with Great Britain.
Oh, Padre.
Which with something that Brazilians inherited, by the way.
Oh, my God.
That's why I don't like the whole like Latino thing. You think I want to be included with those Brazilian colonizers? Of course.
Those Brazilians from nowadays didn't do anything to you. So
Who do you like? Besides,
he only likes the chamos from Caracas.
but I think in conclusion to this whole debate, I think I support the status quo to a certain extent in the Dominican Republic. I mean, in comparison to Haiti, I always need to compare ourselves to our neighbors.
What do you mean status quo of the Dominican
That
Republic?
I don't think we should expropriate all the white people. I don't it should be and it's happening, right? The middle class, there's a increasing middle class people, and then there's also with social mobility, there's racial mobility, right? The problem is when you have like extremely radical ideas, like I want to abolish the class system, which is not going to work. It's simply not going to work. It's illusory. It's utopian. Although I personally believe as well in utopian ideals, but those ones are when you think about it, they're very scary because they are. That's why I push myself a lot when I ask Paola, so what's your solution? What is your solution? She never said the solution. Because the solution is basically expropriating the whites, expelling them, and so on and so on and so on. Like they did to a certain extent in Venezuela, like they did in Haiti, like they did in Cuba to a certain extent.
No, that will never happen in the Dominican Republic.
No, it's not never going to happen. But I think these kinds of Afrocentric people, I'm not saying Paola wants, I'm saying just Afrocentric people that study from the East Coast, that's what they want. In fact, there was a book written by a Dominican, I think he's a professor in a CUNY in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says there was like he wrote a book in response to a book that Manuel Nunez, he's like this. He's actually a black guy. A very
black guy. He's very black and very anti-Haitian.
And extremely anti-Haitian.
Extremely anti-Haitian also.
I sympathize with some of their I sympathize with some of the ideas, but others I don't. I think and he wrote a book, El Ocaso de la Hispanidad, which is basically extremely anti-Haitian. Yeah. He basically thinks that Haitians are going to destroy Hispanicity in Dominican Republic.
They're going to destroy and atrasar República Dominicana.
I think the main one that are destroying Hispanicity are Protestants and all the Americanized Dominican elites.
¿Qué te hicieron los protestantes a ti o a República Dominicana? Tell me.
But yeah, no. Protestants and the Americanized Dominican elites, not the Haitians.
Americanized Dominican elites.
I don't think Haitians are destroying. I don't think Haitians are destroying Hispanicity in Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. But as a response, a guy wrote that, I don't know the title of the book, but he was celebrating the death of Hispanicity in Dominican Republic. A Dominican teacher, college professor in CUNY.
Saint-Hilaire, no sé quién.
I don't know, but he was celebrating the fact that Hispanicity was dying in Dominican Republic. So I'm scared of that discourse. I'm personally scared with that discourse.
But of course, Hispanicity is dying in the Dominican Republic. We are very Americanized, North Americanized.
You have a German accent.
Yo, pero tú estás loca, ¿dónde?
No, se
No,
notaba
I don't
bastante.
think.
You have
Where?
a German accent.
Me,
But
pero ¿a dónde? Never.
but but yeah, but that's not a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing to be Americanized.
But it's something that you cannot stop. It's a process.
No.
We are
No.
very
You can't
Americanized.
look at the
How?
French.
How?
Have you seen the French?
Yes, but that's a front. Come on. You need some geographical and cultural things to stop some. We don't have
And that's,
Dominican don't
yeah, we don't no, but we can recover.
political willingness. One.
But we can recover Hispanidad, right? That's
But do
the
you
only
think
thing
the Dominicans are becoming like that Americanized though, to the point that they'll really lose their cultural
Do
Dominican?
you want to have you seen like Dominican like upper middle class people, the way they talk?
Cristina.
No.
Óyeme, mírame. Llévate de mí. When I was 3 weeks dating with my marido, he told me, like, guys, you say you're Dominican, that you guys are Dominican, but you guys are just Americans. 3 weeks. 3 semanas. Like, todo lo que ustedes hacen es gringo.
But like what? Like what?
What type? Wait, what class? What class those Dominicans were, Paula?
Both the lower class of Dominican Republic emulates Dominicanos, they emulate Black Americans, and los popis, middle class Dominicans, they emulate, like just a regular American higher or middle class. Those poppies, they speak English. Oh yeah, vieja, sea my daddy.
No, I actually think
sports.
Dominican.
I've seen it. Yes, I've seen
TV
it.
shows, our clothing, we emulate everything that's American. Fashion, everything.
There is a whole there in Latin America. For example, in the first half of the 20th century, Latin American middle class was actually very educated. They tended to have like a European style of education, very humanist, very like lawyer-like, right?
And they spoke French.
Also,
Still in Chile,
no,
Colombia.
Yeah, they made a transition from French to Miami, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that explains a lot of the decadence of them, culturally speaking, of the Latin American middle upper class and middle class. In the case of Dominican Republic, oh sorry, I spit it. But in the case of Dominican Republic, I think there was a time where the middle class was fairly educated, like in the whole Latin America. I mean, my bisabuelo, right? He wrote books against Trujillo. He had to be in exile. He was a Mason. If I probably met him, we probably had a fight or something like that. He was a fairly progressive guy, and there was a bunch of like literary people in the middle upper classes and middle class in Latin America that were educated, that knew languages, that and even in that was in the whole Latin America. I mean, the Latin American boom is an example of that, right? The Los Borges, Los Cortázar, Los Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's an example of that educated Latin Americans, right?
Yeah, also.
But in Dominican Republic, there was educated people. I mean, even in the time of Trujillo, we have people like Balaguer, we have people like Peña Batel, we have those type of guys. Pedro Enrique Ureña, Salome Ureña, that type of people. But something happened, and I think there's all middle class people in Latin America are decadent culturally because of the cultural supremacy of the U.S. We changed Paris, who was constructed by Napoleon III, to Miami, who was constructed by Pablo Escobar and his cocaine money.
Lo dijo él. Okay.
So,
Grisel.
but in Dominican Republic in particular, I think the middle upper classes are particularly the most uncultured middle upper classes of the whole Latin America.
Damn.
And that doesn't mean I don't like them. I like them. I was raised with them. I mean, I'm Don Haniel, hijo de Don Fulano. There is no sense of anonymity. There is no anonymous. There's some redes familiares. People know each other. I like that, right? I like that probably from some colonial inheritance that Dominican culture still has, which is different from the U.S., which you're absolutely no one. There's that culture of of being anonymous to a certain extent. There's no like this communal style of living.
Very individualistic.
Yeah, I will say the South. I will say egalitarian to a certain extent and individualistic.
Don't you think it's because you don't belong to the circles that you see it like that?
No,
because
no,
you belong to a certain circle in the DR, the Dominican Republic,
but
in the US you're an immigrant, so you don't belong to that.
Not only that, Paola, but I study with some of them, and they dress like they are poor people. In the sense that
poor in their banks.
Of course, because they're like this type of alternative leftist kids that dress
bourgeois.
But when you check out his last name, they're probably the son of a oil tycoon or something. But even that shows something, right? Even the fact that they need to travel to another state and so on and so on. But I'm sure that some like the most like elite circles here might be like that. But I think it's different because even the poor people in the Dominican Republic might be like that. You might know someone by his last name, that type of stuff. So it's a generalized thing. For example, in the US, I doubt that people ask you, to what school do you go? ¿A qué colegio fuiste?
In the US?
Yeah, they don't ask you that.
You think so?
No. Maybe the university, but it's another thing. In Latin America, they do. ¿A qué colegio fuiste?
So, because I know you have some American firms here, and they only accept you if you went to certain universities here, and they also want you to do whatever thing in the US. A Master of Law, an MBA, something like that. Like you have some top American firms that are very elitist. They only
but I think it is different. I think that the fact that, for example, I think this is the only country that rich people say that they're middle class, right? And that's a thing. I mean, every American think that they're middle class, even if they're fairly well-off rich people. We don't have that culture in Latin America. We don't have that culture in Latin America. We don't have that culture. We don't have the treatment. We don't have. Yeah, we say sir and so on, but we don't have that like fairly like unequal treatment to say don, that type of stuff. We don't have that here in America. I think there's a difference.
Haniel, don't you think that people are having they will watch this, will have the impression that, oh my gosh, he wants to keep the privilege he had in Latin America in the US, and he feels like, oh my gosh, here I'm just X.
No, it's not the same. But even if I was a privileged guy in the US, I doubt that I had that because it's a different culture.
Yeah. He doesn't have his privilege that the high middle class white Dominican.
But I celebrate that. I think that's not a bad thing, to be honest. I don't think that having like redes familiares, having like friends of your high school that you basically they're friends for you for life and that type of stuff, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing, even if it involves. But that is not even as also. But that's also from even the lower sectors of society are like that to a certain extent. They recognize you by their name. They know who you are. They respect you, and that's why you respect. Here's a different thing. And I will, So that's I like that aspect of Latin American culture.
Okay, you like the fact that esa es la nieta de fulana, cuidado, esa es la hija de fulana. And in the US, you have
we don't
earn your respect yourself.
Yeah,
you have to people respect you.
The problem is
daughter you are.
The problem is individualismo y el anonimato. So we have of course, in Latin America, we have a mix between that culture of that city culture of being anonymous, but there's also the truly Hispanic component of casta, of herencia, of heritage, of family heritage, and all of that, right? So there's a mix. I like that. I don't disagree with that. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing because I'm personally, as you can see, I'm not exactly a liberal person. I'm not
No.
exactly.
¿En serio? No, no.
Um,
¿En serio? No juegue, vale.
but not even. But not even in the American conservative sense. I mean, individualism. I couldn't care less about that. I don't like that. I don't even like I think car culture is decadent.
Car culture?
Yeah, we should eliminate cars.
What?
No. Without you lost me.
What? What do you mean?
We should have more walkable cities with more
Mhm.
bikes, probably more horses.
Oh,
Uh,
you're still in college. You're still in college. Oh my gosh.
Carriages? Like,
Ay, qué
I
lindo.
think that the cars.
I went through that process as well.
No. Cars are the destruction of civilization.
Hay más vaina que destruye más que los carros. A mí no me ve.
oh my god.
I mean, have you seen like, but also like in Latin America, car culture, especially I think in Venezuela, and even in Dominican Republic, it was from the Americans. That was a foreign imposition, you know. Also, the connection between masculinity and cars, I find that amazing. I think there seems some sort of like construction weird thing going on that wants to identify masculinity with stupid stuff. So you can have feminists saying, "Oh, look at this stupid stuff. This is masculinity." Don't be like that.
That's capitalism. That's
Probably.
capitalism.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. That familiarity that you can find in Latin American societies, you know.
No, it's not bad, but it creates some privileges, don't you think?
It has
you have a job not only because you're qualified, but also because you're the son of.
That's great. That's great.
No,
that's great.
But because it's not based on
this
only
is
meritocracy.
This also, is no. This is true liberty, Paula.
That's not true liberty.
That family relations.
And in the US, in Miami, you will start as every immigrant. They don't care who you are, who your father is. That your somebody in your family was an important political or historical figure. No, you start from scratch.
Because everything is here. Here's this.
You have to prove your own, honey. Aren't you proud of that?
Here is pure. Social relations are determined by the state and bureaucracy. We don't have that. Social relations are determined pretty much by the family, and that's why. That's a Hispanic culture, you know. It's the centrality of the family in the political life, you know.
It exists in all the cultures.
No, but
you're not at the level. Sorry, you're in the US. You're not at the level that you were.
No, of course. But in the US, no, Paula. Paula. Of course, there's an element. No. But you can, but there's more meritocracy in the US.
Yeah. Yes, right? But at the same time, social relation.
But it's mitigated. It is to a certain extent mitigated. It's not as strong as a lot in America.
Gracias al cielo. Gracias al
cielo. That shows that this is a bourgeois. This shows that this is a bourgeois capitalist.
Gracias Dios mío. Gracias a Dios. And I'm an atheist. Gracias a Dios. Gracias.
I don't know. There's of course there's bad things that come from not having a strong sense of state, not having a strong sense of state bureaucracy. There's also good things, you know. You don't. That is the family in the end is the place of liberty, where the state cannot intervene, and that's why that explains the centrality of the family in Hispanic culture to a certain extent.
The state intervenes in everything, whether you like it or not. Ay, cuidado.
But I don't know. But I want to show you, Paula, that even right now, I think I'm being like a little bit hyperbolic in regards to defending that pseudo caste system. But there's good things about it, right? The community, the sense of community, the sense of respect, the sense of community, the fact that you don't have to spend all this bureaucratic and all this silly meritocratic stuff, right?
Isn't that corruption? Another thing for corruption.
You can call it
Are there
corruption.
rules for
You can call it corruption.
Ah.
I call it hispanidad.
Okay, yeah, it's not synonymous. It's not corruption when it benefits you, but when it benefits other people, it's corruption. It's bad. It's chavismo. It's blah blah blah. But when it benefits you, praise the Lord.
The thing is, but the problem is that you don't see it. You guys don't see it. That applies for people in the upper echelons of society, but also apply for the people in the lower echelons of society. They have also that sense of respect.
Now,
they also have that sense of
guys,
community.
it's also good for you. A sense of community.
I mean, they have it. I think that you don't find in the US.
Sense
Right?
of community exists everywhere. You can mean something.
No, it's not the same thing.
Of
It's
course,
not the
if
same
you
thing.
can do something for me, I
It's
can
not
do
the
something
same.
for you. That's
Paula,
the
it's not the same thing to go to the church and
No,
even
that's
if you're
okay.
not. No. But in the sense of merely cultural, communal, just you going to the communion of your cousins, right? And you know everyone there, and then the carnivals are going on, and you know everyone there, you know your cousins and so on. It's different. It's just simply different. That type of life, and in contrast to the individualizing, atomizing lifestyles that you can find in the US.
It is different. It is. I think it is.
And that's why that lack of state, that social centrality that the family has in Hispanic culture is not only beneficial for the rich, but it's also beneficial for the poor. You know. But of course, I'm fairly conservative in this point.
What's the difference between the sense of family in the Hispanic world and in the US world?
I think in the US,
Where do you send the
immediate family versus
what
I think
happened in the
more of a view of the
Standards.
family.
what happened in the US with the fathers?
They're in homes.
Exactly. You don't have that. If I say to my grandmother, I'm gonna send you there, she's probably gonna say, "Are you insulting me or what?" Like, you know.
But that happens with the Dominican middle and higher class, with the upper class. Actually, those.
I'm not aware of that actually.
It happens.
Maybe now in 5 years that I haven't been in the country, but I know that their grandfathers were lived with them. Majority
For example, the father of Juan Luis Guerra, he lives in un asilo de ancianos. That kind of institution exists.
I know, but
middle class, not for the poor, but the poor must live with our grandmother or our grandmothers or.
But I mean, my friends up. I mean, I'm not a rich guy. This is not true. But my friends live with. Yeah, my friends live with their grandparents, and their grandparents had a formative element in their education as well, you know, and they knew their cousins, and they knew their third cousins, and they probably knew their fourth cousins, and they had parties, and and that's from the richest of the richest to the poorest of the poorest.
Okay, now I see what you're saying,
and that's what I'm defending.
Sense of extended family.
That's what I'm defending, and that also it's a you can say there's the bad part of the privileges, of the lack of state, of corruption. But you know, everything is going to have a bad part. You know, it's like the sexual liberation and the sexual restraint. You know,
no,
both of them are problematic. In the end, the problem is sex. You know,
mi amor, así es que está tú en la vida. Así fue que nacimos.
No, I know. I'm paraphrasing this guy. His name is Nicolás Gómez Dávila, and I think I'm very Daviliano in this point. I mean, the problem is the problem is the human. You know, there's always going to be bad and good things about certain systems, and I think it's fairly. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that the family and the redes de familia are such an important part of Hispanic culture. And you can find it, of course, in other type of cultures, but it's different though. You cannot say it is the same thing. It is different. It is a different thing. It is different.
But don't you think that the richer societies become, the more individualistic they also become.
Sadly.
That that the fact that the family, the extended family.
But do you think that's a deterministic process, though?
See, totally.
Do you think there's like any inevitable?
Yes, inevitable. Yes, totally.
I think I think that as well. That how to a certain extent. But I think there's a possibility to find mixed systems. That's the centrist position. That's the centrist position. If I want to be more radical, I will say no. I'm a Luddite. Fuck technology. Fuck these new advancements. But it is hard. It is hard. Although I have sympathies for that type of view, I recognize that it's hard to maintain in modern society.
It's impossible.
But there should be something to maintain. If we don't have something to maintain, there's probably no. If we don't have something to conserve, there's probably no point to do anything in life.
Maybe you're looking at it from a nostalgic point of view, or
it's not nostalgia. I live that.
You live that.
Yeah. I live that, and I still know that Dominican Republic is, to a certain extent, like that, and other parts of Latin America. If I talk with someone, they're gonna ask me, "¿A qué colegio fuiste?" I know that, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think the culture. I think there are more serious problems with the culture of anonymity that cities have, in contrast to the culture of lo público in Hispanic culture. Privacidad. That's a Protestant concept.
Like, here we go again.
No, it is true.
No existe tampoco ya. La privacidad no existe.
No, sí, claro, yo entiendo eso, pero no. La capacidad para juzgar a los demás
es humana, la tiene todo el mundo.
Y pero eso debería ser más fuerte todavía de lo que, porque ahora las tenemos muy débil. La tenemos muy débil en las culturas occidentales.
De juzgar aún más.
No, ya no. Bueno, depende, porque, o sea, sí lo hacen, pero en un sentido inquisitorial progre, ¿verdad?
Un tatuaje, only judge can judge me. ¿Tú no crees eso?
No.
¿No? O sea,
no.
Tú eres juez.
Yo creo que si esta niña está con este niño, me parece bien que las viejas lo juzguen y hablen así, chico, en sus espaldas.
Y le
jodan la vida a esta niña.
Sí, eso está bien. Te lo estás relajando.
Ajá.
Why? Well, because it's so subjective.
You guys, I do want to. You guys can keep talking about in the actual stream. So,
yeah.
To everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.
Support. Es la tacañería también.